Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Select Board meeting for May 20th, 2020. Tonight will be broadcast on RCTV, Verizon Channel 33, Xfinity Channel 22, also available on Facebook Live on the link from RCTV as well as YouTube Live. Of course, we're having a virtual meeting to model and exhibit proper social distancing. We are accepting public comments by email. Please send your email to selectboard@ci.reading.ma.us, and we will try to monitor comments during the meeting. In addition, we'll be having a public comment session early in the meeting this evening. If you'd like to make a public comment, we ask that you include your full name and address, no disparaging comments, and please limit the size or content of your email so it can be read in less than 2 minutes. And as usual, we're always open to suggestions on how to improve our meetings. We'd like to kind of share this slide first, just talking about resources that the town is offering for information and help. You can always come to the town website. There's the red banner that you can see up here for COVID-19 related information. If you need specific help, human and elder services concerns, you can reach Kevin and Carrie at the COVID-19 help at ci.reading.ma.us. And if you have either general questions, or if you're willing to help, we have specific addresses for that as well. If you need to reach by telephone, please call 781-942-6680. It will give you a menu of options. As you can see here below, just leave your name and number appropriately. And as always, for emergencies, please call 911. For tonight's meeting, just to give you a quick overview, we'll start with the COVID-19 response. We'll have an update from Eleanor Shonkoff from the Board of Health, followed by town updates from Bob. Then we'll have Select Board Liaison and Town Manager reports, followed by public comment. Then on the agenda tonight, we're going to vote to approve the School Nutrition Director through an agreement with the Town of Wakefield. There'll be an update on Meadowbrook Golf Club. We'll get an economic development update from Erin Schaefer, our economic development director. Sharon Angstrom, our town accountant, will give her quarterly report to the board and also talk about a select board policy changes being proposed. Then we'll review and look at the update on the town manager's goals. We'll talk a little bit about communications. There were 3 questions that we laid out a few weeks ago to understand what it is that we're trying to review in communications, and each of the board members will have a chance to go through that. Next, I'd like to talk about a select board retreat and trying to set a date for doing that sooner rather than later. And then we'll talk about future agenda items, and I think we have 1 set of minutes to look at going through there. So without further ado, Eleanor, I'm going to stop my share here. And Eleanor, you are muted.
Thanks, Mark.
You are most welcome.
Thank you. So thanks for, happy to be here. And since you guys heard from Kevin Sexton, board member, last time, we've met 3 times. So I have updates about those meetings. But then the biggest change since then has been the governor's reopening plan. So I've made some slides because I thought maybe it would be useful for people watching to see visuals on like things that are on the website and templates that businesses will need to complete, so that if, once this is made public, people can actually go ahead and see that information and use the links. The links probably aren't helpful if you're looking at the meeting right now, except to Google them and figure it out. So I'm going to try doing screen share and we'll see if that works. Okay, so does everybody see that? Is that working? Okay.
Yep. We're seeing your presenters version.
Are you seeing the presenter view? I wondered whether that would happen. Let's see. Let me try a different way. Is that still the same thing?
It is.
Okay. All right. And let me just try to get out of there. Okay. Apologies for the time. I tested this earlier, but it was just on my own phone. So, okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Very
Is
good.
that good? Okay. So I'll talk about what we've been doing in our meetings. The first thing that we did, and this was before the reopening plan came out, was to extend the closures of the Pleasant Street Center, the library, town hall, public safety, and the senior van, public safety, the walk-in service for things like compost, until further notice. But then the reopening plan came out on the 18th. So our discussion at our meeting tomorrow will involve any date for opening any of that. We're also going to be talking about opening the track and the fields. There is some guidance from the state on that. The reopening plan includes discussion of some athletic fields and courts on May 25th opening, and all of the openings will be things that are going to have restrictions in place. So social distancing, masks, hand sanitizer, that sort of thing. So we'll have more information about that. We had an update from the public health nurse, Christine Harris, at our 5:15 meeting with great news. She says that our contact tracing has been going extremely well. Again, wanted to express her thanks for the school nurses and the incredible assistance that they've offered. Initially, we were seeing some, it was older adults who were testing positive, and we're now seeing some people in their 20s, mostly due to workplace exposures, but there haven't been any hospitalizations with that age group. Most exposure is household contact, but it is possible for people living the same house what we're seeing, to not catch it. If this is more often if somebody who is sick has their own bathroom, for example. We heard from Laura Jim about election safety. Not surprisingly, she is incredibly on top of it. So this is about the special election, which will probably be in August and not on the same day as the state primary. The plans now are that it will be in the field house and with people being spaced out. There are, with masks and all sorts of things like that. The state is also rolling out communication about trying to encourage people to use a mail-in ballot. I think technically it's absentee ballot, and there are bills under consideration right now to try to have it be so that the reasons that you're able to use an absentee ballot will be acceptable, just to have COVID-19 be the reason that you do a mail-in ballot. But we are in conversations with her to talk about election safety. And there may be some updates too from the town on this, from Bob and Jean, but there's a rolling graduation scheduled for 5/23 for the high school, and I'm sure there are more details to come out about that, but we're also in conversation with them about that. And the Board of Health is planning to send out a survey to residents to try to tailor the education and the communication that comes out from us, what's most helpful for people as we move into this reopening phase. What do we need to emphasize so that people are staying safe but also feel informed? Okay, so the next slides that I have are based on the reopening plan, but they're in particular drawn from this document's guidance for municipalities on enforcing COVID-19 orders. So again, you can see the link below for when we make these slides public. So just high level, and I can go through this quickly, but feel free to stop and ask questions or anything like that. I'll try to keep it brief. I have quite a few slides, I think 10. So for individuals, there still will be wearing face masks in public, no more than 10 people gathering unless you're outside and spaced apart. The reopening does call for an enforcement that can happen from local boards of health with up to $300 fines. We haven't levied any fines. We don't anticipate needing to do this. I mean, we're absolutely taking an education and communication approach, which is also in alignment with the state. For businesses, they will need to have a plan to self-certify and make sure that they are in accordance with the new workplace standards. The plans are going to be reviewed and addressed on a complaint basis. Complaints can either be given by customers or employees and to the Board of Health, or they can be given to the Department of Labor Standards. We have an email address specifically for questions, complaints for the town that goes to the health agent, Laura Blassick, the chair of the Board of Health, MEW, and I believe Bob also gets these. And then we are also posting some guidance that's specific to different business sectors on the town website, which links to the mass.gov website. In terms of the businesses, and again, I apologize if this is reiterating things that you all already know. But for those watching, the businesses that are able to start opening now on May 18th are those that have already been open. They now need to self-certify by May 25th. But manufacturing, construction, places of worship with reduced capacity, and then firearms retailer and shooting ranges. And then on May 25th, you can see here those listed on the right. And again, all of these are going to be with restrictions in place. And we're going to be monitoring those by complaint. So I've talked about the self-certification that businesses need to do. So the state has provided a template that businesses will need to fill out in order to have their sort of binder to have their plan in place. They'll also be needing to post signage. And this is an example of what this is the website to which the town is going to be linked to show sector-specific guidance. So you can see here, construction, offices, spaces, car washes, but there is also places of worship, recreation, and health and human services. So what I wanted to show here is our public health numbers. I mean, we report the number of cases as of last night at 8:22 p.m. We had confirmed positives of 291 cases. Of those, 175 are active, 85 have recovered, and 30 have passed. And for this slide and the next slide, what I wanted to show, well, here, I'll talk about it, but this is in order to really compare the public health metrics that the state is going to be using. So this figure shows a 7-day moving average of new cases in Reading by date. It's just rounded to no decimal points. And so we seem to be past the first surge and are currently in sort of a steady state, although with such a small population, we'd expect to see some ups and downs. And as reopening happens, we expect that this is going to change. So as with the reopening plan, the state of Massachusetts is going to use public health metrics to guide whether or not any reopening needs to go back to an earlier phase. So if we need to close, the state is watching these public health metrics. So they're not actually watching this one. They're watching the positive test rate, which is the number of positive cases out of the total amount of tests that we've done. But for Reading, the town of Reading, I'm not able to get specific information about how many tests we've done. So this is a similar metric that we can watch. And then this slide shows the 3-day moving average of deaths for the town of Reading, and then the 3-day moving average for the state of Massachusetts. So this is a public health metric that we can compare directly, the town and the state. So as with the previous figure, the interpretation is a little bit more difficult because we have such a small population, but we would be watching for any continued increases over time in terms of thinking about returning to a previous phase. But our understanding is that the state will be making any determinations for different regions about returning to a previous phase. It may be that a region is, for example, Worcester and Boston, and everything else are different regions, so I'm not exactly sure how those regions are defined. But these are some data that we can monitor as we begin the reopening phase. So with that, I can answer any questions. Thank you for listening to a sort of a long update. I can stop sharing or continue sharing if people have questions about certain slides.
Questions from the board? Yeah.
Hi, this is Anne. Hi, this is Anne. Thanks to everyone for your patience. I'm joining by phone as I've had some internet connectivity issues, and since I've been kicked off a few times from Monday's FinCom Zoom call, I figured it was safer to join by phone. I am, however, having some internet connectivity success, and I'm watching the RCTV Facebook live feed right now, so I am able to see Eleanor's slide. And I was just wondering if, I'm assuming the April 1 date is an error, because it would be out of order if that were the case.
From
like April, it goes April 29th, April 1st, May 3rd.
I'm sorry, I'm not sorry, I'm turning my head. I'm sorry that I'm not seeing where you're looking. Are you looking at the cases or the deaths?
I'm looking at the 3-day moving averages of deaths for the town of Reading.
Yep.
Yeah, right next to May 3rd.
Yep.
It's probably April, I don't know, 30th, I'm not sure. May 1st? It's got to be May 1st.
Yeah, I'm not. So it's April 29th, May 1st, May 3rd, May 5th.
Yeah, so it doesn't actually say May 1st. It says April 1st.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's it's.
Yeah, sorry. It's strange. Excel just does this automatically. It's the number and followed by the month. So 7 APR is 7 April. So it's 29 APR,
So,
1 May.
1 May.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
it's
That's
1 May,
confusing.
3 May. Got it. Thank you. That is making sense to me now. Thank you.
All right, yeah, that's a good thing to clarify. Also, I should clarify, this is a moving average, so these are actually have decimal points. I've just rounded it to no decimal points to make it easier to see.
Great.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Eleanor, when you said that some of the information will be moving to the website, I assume you mean the town website? And do people get to that by going to that COVID-19 section, and then is there a Board of Health area?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am not exactly sure where Jane will post it on the town website. We were envisioning that at least there would be something on the Board of Health website, but it makes a lot of sense, yes, to have it when people click on the COVID-19 button to have it there as well. And I think there was a plan, and Jean can maybe add more insight here, to include Aaron so that the public sector, and I can go back to that side, so this public sector specific guidance might be pushed out directly to businesses. I mean, it's all on the website. It's all.
I'm happy to speak to that.
Oh,
Yeah, so sorry.
Thank you. I didn't know you were there. Very helpful.
Yeah. We will be pushing out a Back to Business guide tomorrow, Back to Business toolkit tomorrow, and it does include all of these links. That will be located on the Economic Development webpage on the town website, but it can be located in a number of other places like Facebook, social media. Yeah, there will be a big push to get that out.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the board or comments? No, everybody good? Great. Eleanor, thank you very much. Can I ask you to stop sharing?
Yes.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Appreciate it.
Great. Yeah. Thank you very much. Super. Bob, do you want to take it from here, or John and Gail next? What's your preference?
Sure, I'll just do a quick update. Thanks, Eleanor. In addition to the email address that Eleanor showed, and all this will be on the website and published tomorrow, to your first slide or your earlier slide, Mark, we'll have a 5th phone number option. So if employees or customers or business want to get in touch, not via email, but they'd prefer to call, that choice will be added to the phone options as well.
Great.
In terms of the governor's rollout, 100 town managers or so were on a conference call yesterday with the lieutenant governor and some members of their administration. And it became a little bit obvious that town hall and city hall guidance on opening is not crystal clear. We know we fall under the offices as a use category, but the 25% measure, they needed to circle back to the MMA to clarify what that means. There's 3 possible interpretations. I won't bore you, but we can't determine when and how to open town hall safely until we get that clarification. Most of the peer communities that I've heard from are targeting early to mid-June, as an example. We will definitely need some amount of time to train staff. We've done, I believe, all the physical safety improvements we need, but then we'll have to train staff on how to handle customer flow. So it won't be too long. But on another call with peers around the area, none of us have received a single complaint about town halls being closed. Now, obviously, everyone understands why they have to be closed. But the feedback we're getting is our business is being done pretty well remotely. So I was really encouraged. I'm sure it's not perfect. I'm sure there's some people that would prefer to come in and do something, but we've been able to provide a good level of service even while closed. The third and final point is we had a second mask distribution today. The first one, we had packaged 8,000 masks and distributed 5,100. Today, we loosened up the rules because our supply was much better. We gave out more masks per person, per car. And we also made sure everyone understood the time frame was not first come, first serve. And the traffic flow today was immensely better. There was a little bit of a backlog at the beginning, maybe 20 minutes or so as the first group of people queued up as early as 7:30. But by 9 o'clock, there was no one in line. So between 9 and 11, it came sporadically. And we actually gave out more masks today, 7,300. So there's been 2 distributions with over 12,000 plus distributions, home delivery, if you will. We've done a nice job. And I really appreciate all the volunteers. We've had an enormous outpouring of volunteer support. And the volunteers really enjoyed helping. And it was good to see that also. So that's all I have in terms of the command update.
Great. Any questions from the board? No? All right. John and Gail, you have some updates you'd like to share?
No, we're here for one of the agenda items.
Oh, okay. Very good. All right. We're going to keep rolling then. Great. Okay. Next on the agenda, select board liaison and town manager reports. First of all, select board members, who has updates for this evening that they would like to share? I see Karen. Anyone else? Karen, why don't you go ahead, please?
Okay, really quick update on the gas leak project. David Zeke, chair of the Climate Advisory Committee, and myself attended a meeting last Thursday. It was entitled something like the Pilot Communities Organization. So these are the other regional communities that are interested in mapping gas leaks and working with National Grid. National Grid did have representatives on the call. We got some insight into how, their business has been impacted by COVID. Not a lot of staff and not a lot of technology staff, and people sleeping in offices. So they are focusing on, much as we are focusing on getting the core of their business done and keeping people moving forward. So not a lot of project with this specific initiative, but it was helpful to at least have that update. Certainly, any gas leaks that we smell, those reports, we should continue sending them in. They welcome them. Nothing has changed about that. And then today, David and I met with Bob quickly just to kind of catch up on this gas leak project. The first finite component of this would actually be a methane gas identification project. So we have a couple of to-dos to go find out, look at similar contracts with similar communities, and actually reach out to the consultant to find if he is essential and what kind of timeline and availability he might have for this. So we'll have some follow-up in a week or so on that. And that's it.
Thanks, Karen. Ann or Vanessa, do you want to talk about the FinCom meeting? I'm taking that as a no.
I can. So they did approve a revised budget and voted after much deliberation and back and forth to restore from what Bob had originally proposed with respect to raises for non-union employees, as well as an HR position for the schools using free cash. Bob or Vanessa, feel free to clarify anything I've said.
I think that's spot on. And the only thing I would add is there was extensive conversation about how much free cash to use this year. There had been some opinions that we should use more free cash to fill all positions, capital projects, et cetera, maintenance that had been previously included in the budget. But it was decided that on Bob's guidance, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong here, that we would proceed with the proposal as Bob had put forward, with the exception of the COLA raises for non-union employees.
Great. Thank you very much. For tomorrow night's RMLD commissioner meeting, do you know if the agenda includes voting on the proposal for the payment to the town of Reading?
The payment is on their agenda.
Is on their agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a tomorrow night meeting. Okay, great. Again, apologies for not attending last week's meeting, but I know that the VASC put together a schedule, and if I could, I'd like to just do a brief commercial for volunteers. So, one of the questions we've always talked about is, how do you volunteer? It is very easy to do so. You see the little volunteer opportunities tab that is on the town website. Then there's a volunteer application. The application is over here. And thank you, Karen, for your question the other day. You can email your form to townclerk@ci.reading.ma.us.
Wow, that was a great commercial.
Brief, but to the point. Any other updates, liaison reports, activities from board members?
Mark,
Yes, Colin.
I just received some messages for the past couple of weeks about the volunteer positions and how the website's not that descriptive on the roles and what is expected. I saw somewhere in an email, I think, that it was discussed in the past. If there's anything that can be done or, be more informative to people who are looking at different boards and committees. I've been mainly saying, reach out to the chair, or if I can be a go-between to, ask any questions. But I didn't receive a lot, but received several that people were just not sure how involved any particular board or committee was, other than the meetings.
Yeah, no, from my perspective, I think your approach is just right, Carlo. The other thing that we might want to consider would be asking the chairs of the committees perhaps to put together a couple of sentences or a paragraph about their committee and the activities. And then we could coordinate that activity and put it on the website. Perhaps that's an option too. Other folks have thoughts on that?
I don't know if they've looked at, so each board and committee actually has their own page on the website beyond just the list of opportunities. And on each of their pages, they have the full description of their mission, what they do, when they meet, and all that information. So I'm not sure if they're looking for more than that, then maybe reach out to the chair, but each board page does have their mission and their general work, what they do.
Yeah, I'm looking, some of them are pretty generic. For example, I can show you the Board of Health here. Let me just show it to you. So here's the mission, protect and promote the health and well-being of the citizens of Reading and the quality of the environment. Great in terms of mission, but Carlo, I suspect you were asking more about kind of what does the board do? What kinds of activities do they get involved with? When do they usually meet? Things like that.
Yeah, and it's a good example. Some are vague, some are less vague, some are very vague. So, and some are have a rough description, and I get it. You know, a lot of people, you know, want to know as much as they can. You know, by reading it, then maybe talking to someone first. So I know there's a lot going on, but yeah, some are better than others.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's people wanting to learn a little bit more about what's involved. If I join this board, what kinds of things am I going to be doing, and when do they usually get together, and more kind of what's the activity that they're going to be engaged in, not the subject matter.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Do you think we could ask chairs to put together a couple of sentences or a paragraph to talk about that?
Mark, if I might,
Please.
one of the town manager goals is volunteerism, so we have a little discussion there, but what boards in the past have discussed is first having the select board have sort of an onboarding process, which you now have, and then to think about all the boards they appoint, and similarly from a top down, think about what improvements they need to make for new members or prospective members. And one of them is clearly to somehow do a summary and advertising job of the board. But even more complex, I think, is to maybe have an application process that doesn't rely on someone knowing exactly what they want to do, but a more general, what are your interests and availability and so forth, and having a process that might direct them towards things. So, you know, that's a discussion we can have anytime.
Yeah, and I think when we get to that discussion point later, Bob, too, part of that was also thinking about, is there an advantage to people spending a period of time on one board and then perhaps moving to another?
That's right.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Short term, as each of us are going to be reaching out to all the boards and committees anyway, perhaps we could introduce ourselves to the chair and ask if they'd be willing to just send back a couple of sentences to get this started.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So that covers everybody in terms of updates. Okay, next on the list is public comment.
I have two things, Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot town manager report. Sorry, Bob.
Thank you. To follow up on Eleanor and John and Galen here with details, there's a high school class of 2020 spirit parade that will start this coming Saturday, rain or shine, May 23rd. The location of the start of the parade is Jordan's Furniture's parking lot. It will end at the high school campus, very close to the bell, which will be rung many times. Arrival time, 9:15 a.m. The parade will begin at 10 o'clock sharp, and there'll be a caravan of all the cars participating all the way up Main Street, left onto Birch Meadow. There are some details available in both the school and the town website. We'll probably push things out to Facebook if we haven't. I really didn't check. But there are some requirements for participation and some safety measures that all folks involved should adhere to. Second item, and if I was really clever with my camera right now, I'd point it out the window. The high school has done a terrific job putting senior pictures out on the common right on the lawn next to Town Hall. And today, and I believe it's complete except for some fire information, there's veterans flags on the common. It's really a nice combination of seniors and veterans, and it's well worth going out of your way to drive by if you wouldn't normally do that. It's only going to be up for the next few days. So, you know, I believe the high school stuff will start to come down after the parade, and the Memorial Day stuff will come down next Tuesday. So congratulations to both groups on doing a wonderful extemporaneous celebration and memorial at the same time. I think it's really nice. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, so we shift over in terms of public comment.
Mark, can I add to that real quick?
Please, go ahead, Colin.
The senior signs were, as far as I know, were still by the Reading Rotary. I think that should be mentioned.
Oh, thank you to the Rotary. That's fantastic. Nicely done. Great. In terms of public comment, I'm looking at, there was one a little bit earlier. Bob, did you want to respond? There were two parts to a question. One of the questions was related to how Elder Services is managed. I was wondering if you might address that part of it.
Right now, it's all hands on deck. Kevin Vomiller and Jean are involved from a management standpoint. The senior center is closed until further notice, much like town hall. So I really didn't have a detailed update on either parts of her question.
Yeah, but if people want to reach out or need to reach out, you probably should go back to the email address that we shared before.
That's right. Yeah, there's been a lot of outreach back and forth between our senior community and our staff. So if anyone has any questions, you can always just email me or call me.
Super. All right. Is any other questions?
Just, give a shout out to the Elder Human Services team because they've really been doing a lot, and the outreach that they've been doing, I know it's been mentioned here a few times, with seniors and connecting to them during this time where we worry so much about isolation. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the seniors that they appreciate the town checking in on them. So just because we don't have an Elder Services administrator and we don't have a senior center that's open and we don't have a van that's on the road, the team down there is doing great work, and I want to acknowledge that and thank them.
Awesome. Thanks, Jean. Slightly out of order, if I could, and I should have brought it up kind of as the part of the liaison reports. The town meeting task force met again today. There was a survey that was sent out by Laura earlier this week asking people about preferences. More than 50% of people were able to respond within a day. And then between Alan and Laura, there should be more information being requested in the next few days. And I believe that we'll be able to next week, which is when we're scheduled to have our discussion about holding town meeting on the 15th of June. The final determination, obviously, Alan will be deeply involved in that with his recommendation. He's planning to attend our meeting next week as well. So, but town meeting members should expect another request for information and update in the next couple of days, literally.
Mark, will that include the results of the survey?
I think it is probably designed to dig a little bit deeper behind some of the answers that came in. I don't think it was talked about to kind of give the answers that were there yet, but more to kind of find out behind the scenes a little bit more detail.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments on that?
Mark?
Carl.
So the task force met today, you said, correct?
Right.
And they're meeting again when?
So we there's going to be a survey. The second survey should go out Thursday, probably, perhaps Friday. And then we're meeting again next week before the select board meeting. And at that point, I think there'll be a clear plan and the ability to confirm the date and how things are going to get conducted.
Does that give the task force enough time, given the holiday and the survey? If all the surveys aren't back, how critical are the surveys into the decision making?
So they're very helpful to the decision making. Most people specified a preference for virtual, but we want to make sure that we're able to accommodate virtually everybody. Pardon me, I didn't mean to say virtually everybody, but to be able to accommodate people. The logistics get much more complicated if we have some in-person activities. I know that Alan Folds talked about attending an update from Lexington that kind of had a mock session earlier this week. And Lexington is going all virtual. And there are a number of systems that we talked about. Part of it is making sure everyone can participate. Part of it is making sure that we can capture votes. Part of it is to make sure that Laura is able to kind of capture all the information that's taking place. So The next set of questions are designed to kind of learn a little bit more about that. We all went back with some homework assignments on what we need to learn more about. So in particular, the issue of polling, the issue of capturing votes in a secure fashion. So there's a little bit more learning, but to answer your question, I think there is enough time to get it done by next week.
And then 2 weeks later, have a town meeting?
So the warrant is going to be back from the printer approximately the middle of next week, Bob. That's our goal.
Yes.
Right. And then that's going to get probably delivered to all town meeting members. It would be ideal if there could be an update from the town moderator, giving kind of instructions on how things will move forward from there and what his plan is to run the town meeting. If we can do all of that next week, end of next week, that would be great. And then from there, the plan would be we need to have some precinct meetings, and through those precinct meetings, we'll be able to talk to people who are comfortable using technology as well as those who aren't, and try to assess the needs and resolve any issues that come up. So the precinct meeting is kind of a training session in some sense for how it'll move forward. Once that's complete, it'll take care of the training meetings, but also it'll take care of the precinct meetings, but also the training. And then perhaps there'll also be a kind of a mock town meeting that people can attend if they would like to. Perhaps taking an article, going through the debate process, voting, to make sure that everything works to everyone's needs.
And Mark, I know we don't need a quorum for town meeting, correct?
The expectation is that we're looking for a quorum. That was Alan's point.
We're looking for one, but it's not required.
No, it is required right now. There's no legislation that says anyway. Otherwise, that may change.
Yeah.
That legislation, though, is primarily aimed at open town meeting to give a firm number.
Okay.
Yep. And the legislation, the expected timing is and Bob, you should give some updates on or before June 1st. Right. Because essentially all the towns and communities are dealing with this in that time frame, but it isn't done as of today. So I think the point that Alan shared was that Lexington is planning to go ahead with their plan pretty much regardless of what comes out. They're driving it ahead. They have their plan. They have things pretty well set up. They were instructing other communities on what they're doing and felt very good. And they're doing, as I mentioned, all virtual.
Is Alan the only one invited, or is RCTV else invited to the, Lexington town meeting or the mock town meeting?
There probably could be others. I'll check with Alan as to kind of what's possible in terms of that.
And when is their town meeting? I'm sorry. Do you know when their town meeting is?
I don't. I'm sorry.
No.
Let me just take an. I'll touch base with Alan. We are planning to. Our IT group is going to learn a lot more from Lexington's also to better understand what they're doing, how they're doing certain things, and then the idea of the mock session is to, number one, make sure members are comfortable, but also make sure we have our systems working.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
You have questions on that or comments? All righty. Has any other public comment come in to this point? I don't see any. Does anyone see any? No?
Nope, I don't see any.
All right. Next item, school nutrition director for Reading and Wakefield. Bob, you want to grab that?
Yeah, John and Gail, do you want me to share a screen and put the document up? Yeah,
Perfect.
okay.
Thanks, Bob.
That'd be great.
Let me know if that worked.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. John, do you want to take it?
I'm actually going to turn this over to Gail because she's done the bulk of the work on this with Wakefield.
Who do I get to turn it
Yeah,
over
you can
to?
pass it back to me if you want.
I pass it back to Bob. Actually, thank you guys for having us here tonight. we did want to present the intermunicipal agreement that we have. It's one of several that we have with Wakefield, but this is one for the sharing of our school nutrition director, who I know we've talked about her and her role multiple times at these meetings. She is running both our district and Wakefield currently. So quick shout out for her. She's doing an amazing job right now, continuing to feed the students of both districts, going through the ever-changing rules and requirements around being able to maintain these services, as well as making sure we're able to do it in the most affordable way. But what you have in the packet is a redlined version of the current agreement. So we have a 3-year agreement, which is ending. And the reason this is a little bit later than we would have historically done it is we did have a change in the director position this year. The previous director left at the end of the summer, and Danielle started mid to end of October. So we wanted to make sure that both districts were very comfortable with the new person in the position before we moved forward with renewing the agreement. We've both been extremely happy with everything she's brought to the district, all of her knowledge from prior districts she's been in, and very minor changes to the contract. We updated the amounts, and this represents a 2.5% increase each year. We have decided that determining the fee up front is really the best for both districts, because it does allow budget certainty for each group. Danielle is an employee of the Reading Public Schools, so we are responsible for hiring reviews. It was a very collaborative process. We had multiple people from Wakefield involved in the committee when we were hiring Danielle, so we do share all of that. We did increase the day count in the contract just based upon looking at the number of days we had been paying the director and what it really takes to open and close the schools. What we did add is a little bit of language to give both districts flexibility, because as of right now, neither district has made a determination what we will be doing over the summer. So the contract as it previously existed did not contemplate that. But what this will allow us is flexibility if we were to do a summer program, that whomever does a summer program would bear the costs of the time for the director. So this has been reviewed and approved through the Reading School Committee. We also worked closely with Wakefield. It has been through their, I almost called them select board, but their town council and their school committee. Everybody changed the name, so I'm trying to catch up with what everybody's calling themselves now, and their school committee. So it was a very collaborative process. We are thrilled with everything she's doing, so we are hopeful that everyone will approve us to continue this relationship. It's one of the very successful ones we have working with Wakefield.
Thanks, Gail. Any questions from board members?
Mark, I have one question.
Please.
I was just curious, the salary figure in there, is that a 50-50 sharing, including health benefits and all of those things, or?
It does take into account all items, including, so we pay for all of the memberships, all of the travel, because we're very involved in the School Nutrition Association, so it is meant to split all of the various costs.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Other questions from the board? No, it seems pretty straight up. Carlo, can you create a motion for this? Which probably could be as straightforward as, I guess, move to approve the intermunicipal agreement between Reading Public Schools and Wakefield Public Schools.
Yeah.
As written.
Okay. Motion to approve the school nutrition director inter-municipal agreement between Reading Public Schools and Wakefield Public Schools.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Let's go through roll call. Anne?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Carlo?
Yes.
And Mark? Yes. So we're 5-0.
Great. Thank you very much. We very
Thank you,
much
folks.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next on the agenda, Meadowbrook Golf Club update. Do we have the members joining? Are they available to join a little bit early?
Yes, it looks like Sally is just starting to join. Let me just take a minute and describe one thing that the select board often has signatures that are required for certain documents. Different legislation has had a lot of discussion about wet signatures and dry signatures. For instance, the Haverhill Street speed limit technically requires your signature. We're still working on what is actually required. Mascot doesn't know the answer yet, but it's possible that we may need to circulate documents among you and probably drive to your house or arrange something to get an actual signature when we need to. So with that, I'll introduce Sally, President of Meadowbrook.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you for having me this evening. We are here for, I think there's 2 items, and I will just be very brief. I do have a document if you need me to put it up, if you're a visual person.
Yeah,
But
I'll share that when you want to.
Wonderful, thank you. So Meadowbrook Golf Club is requesting a change to our liquor license. There's 2 elements to that change. One is a very pro forma change in manager. Our long-term manager, Bob Morelli, stepped down at the end of last season, and we are seeking to appoint Lori Batchelor as the new. So that application will be in its entirety. The second reason is for a temporary relocation of our liquor license, and that is as a result of the devastating fire we experienced on April 17th. And so I would be remiss if I didn't start this conversation by thanking the first responders, the fire and the police of the town of Reading, who were just spectacular that day. And we are just so relieved that no one was injured in that day, and for the wonderful service we received. So thank you all on behalf of the membership. So for the temporary relocation, and if you want to put that up, that would be great. Maybe the visual will help. Our decision making on where to put temporary services was guided by a number of factors. One was a location that could be secured. We also were considering our neighbors, how to be sensitive to noise and where the traffic, people traffic congestion would be. We want to leverage existing structures and provide a good experience for our members. And lastly, obviously, we are trying to take into consideration the fact that all this is occurring during COVID and what the guidelines might look like. So the picture in front of you might be the best way to walk through this. The boxes down on the bottom half are the existing pro shop of Meadowbrook. So for people who might or might not be familiar with this, the right-hand side, the white space, is Grove Street, going down Grove Street. Thank you for helping me with the visuals. And the bottom half is an existing structure, our pro shop. So the theory of the temporary services is to take the left-hand side of that pro shop where golf bags had historically been stored, and again, won't be during COVID, and to renovate that to be the area where we could lock, secure, and renovate to have that be where the majority of the food and beverage service would be out of. The top half of that diagram where you see the tables, that is today, that is an existing chain-linked fenced area. Historically, that was where we stored our golf carts. So we have moved the golf carts out there, and the proposal is to put up a 30 by 50 tent within that chain-link fence, and that would be the primary seating area. And as you can see, the tables are spread 6 feet apart. We've addressed egress, 2 egresses here. We've tried to address handicap and accessibility in this. So again, working with the town planning office, the building inspector, and the assistant town manager, we've tried to put together a plan that really anticipates everything in terms of the requirements to be compliant with health, safety, and other town requirements. In terms of operations, we would have the same hours of operations, essentially from 11 a.m. to dusk. All the beverages, particularly alcohol, would be stored in that physical structure that could be locked on the bottom. Lori, Lori Batchelor, who we're asking to be appointed as the manager here, has training for the staff, and obviously we would keep up with that. And then aside from snacks and the beverages within that pro shop area, the plan also includes assumption of bringing in a food truck where the hot food could be served from. It would be cleaned and prepared at a commissary in the area, brought on site, and then removed daily. So that's the quick overview of our plan. Happy to do any questions, but again, I just wanted to thank you for your time this evening and for the chance to give you an overview of those two items, change of manager and temporary services.
Questions from the board? And just to clarify, so tonight, thank you, first of all, for the presentation. This is an opportunity tonight for the board to hear about this, to ask specific questions, and make sure I've got it right, Bob. Then we'll plan in 2 weeks' time to hold a public hearing.
That's right.
Okay.
Correct.
And discuss it and take a vote after the public hearing would be the plan. So tonight's an opportunity for the board to be exposed to this plan, ask questions. No vote will be taken this evening. So questions from the board.
Thank you, Mark. To clarify further, so what we will be asked to do is to approve the change in manager and to approve the new location, but the Board of Health would still, or the health department would be responsible for enforcing, the necessary health requirements in terms of social distancing, et cetera. And I'm assuming as well the reopening is contingent on us being in a further phase of the state's reopening plan. Is that right?
That would be correct. From our perspective, this is trying to be prepared for when the state guidance allows, and proactive.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the presentation, and we're glad to hear that you're looking at new ways to operate, given everything that you've been through. Thanks.
Yeah.
Karen?
My questions were just along the same lines. The Board of Health's involvement. I think this is very creative use of space, and just this is it's like a new restaurant opening. So that would be the first question I would ask. So as long as they're going to be involved, I have no further questions.
Oh.
Are there restroom facilities at the pro shop?
The restroom facilities will equally be covered both for golf and for the food service operation through a trailer function, again, when the regulations allow us to open that.
Thank you.
So it would be not in, it'd be right outside this area shown here. So there are some lovely temporary restrooms and trailers that we would be bringing in.
Yeah, they have some nice ones. Thank you.
They do. They've come a long way.
And so just to reiterate for a second, liquor and things would be secured in the area where the golf bags are currently. So
correct.
It's a closed building and fully
closed building, locked, cameraed. We thought that was the best way to keep them secure. Yep.
Great. Is there a time frame that you're envisioning that this would be the arrangement, and then kind of a follow-up plan to happen, or is this kind of until further notice?
Do you mean a start date on this?
No, sorry. Thinking, so this would be kind of it's set up as a temporary structure. Correct.
So this would be through our season, which typically extends into the fall. And obviously because it's a tent, there will be, it may be a shorter season than others for us. And again, then in the future, we will be talking about our restoration plan. So it could be possible we would open this in the spring again in the same configuration, depending on the timeline of that.
Great. And then, Bob, just in thinking about the license change that would be requested, would it have a time frame on it, or would it be until I know it's annual anyway? Is that correct?
It is, and right now there's a bill in front of the Senate, or about to be in front of the Senate, dealing with liquor licenses and restaurants and outdoor. So that would be impacted. And right now the sunset date on that legislation is November 30th, as opposed to the whole year. But that's because it's outside, so it makes sense. So, Meadowbrook is properly posed to deal with regulation as it may come, and we'll all just have to do that. So whatever the board approves in 2 weeks, and certainly town council's involved, we'll understandably need to react to future legislation, I guess I'll say. And also, just to be clear, this has now been advertised as a public hearing. I think it was today is the first day. All the abutters will be notified with a certified letter, or have been.
Great. No, I think it looks exciting. It'd be great to open things up again. Any other questions? Sorry, Vanessa, I didn't call on you. I kind of snuck in. Sorry.
No, this is great. Thank you very much.
Great. Last chance, gang. Any other questions? Super.
Great. Thank you very much.
No, thanks for coming in tonight.
Absolutely.
Next on our agenda, Erin, for economic development update, please. You are muted, Erin, for the moment.
Try again. Hello, everyone. I think the biggest news that I want to share is that I've been working really hard on a back to business toolkit for businesses to help everyone kind of navigate what the state regulations are, what our local requirements are, and such. So briefly, to run through the table of contents, we have the Reopening Massachusetts page, reopening checklist, back to business pro tips that the chamber and I, Lisa Egan and I, put together, and Lisa Egan and I have both been working really hand in hand, speaking to each other almost daily at this point regarding supporting businesses. We also have a Massachusetts PPE vendor list for businesses. I've been fielding a lot of phone calls from businesses looking for ordering PPE and not knowing where to go. So Massachusetts has posted a vendor list for businesses to order supplies. So I have that information. I also have information on the Massachusetts mandatory workplace safety standards that were recently published, as well as the Massachusetts safety protocols by business sector, which were the buttons that were shown earlier this evening. And then I also have information about the Town of Reading Board of Health order. Thank you, Bob. A sneak preview. So what this document is meant to be a living document, meaning that when information is updated by the state or by the Board of Health or otherwise, that information will be integrated into this document. There's also a lot of flexibility here for businesses to also tell me or Lisa what they need. So this toolkit is based off of what we've heard from businesses and important information obviously published from the state. But again, if there are tools and resources that particular businesses need or want to know about, we can certainly add additional information here. This document is also dynamic, meaning that you can click on icons and be able to be directly linked to particular places, the state website, and a bunch of other things. And even more specifically, I think the state website is actually hard to navigate, particularly when more and more information gets published. And so I have created some icons and information here where you will be directly navigated to the page that you're looking for. So in particular, if you're looking for safety protocols by your business type, like hair salons, for example, there's actually a button in this document where you can click on that button and it'll take you to the state protocols specifically for hair salons. So you don't have to navigate through that. Yeah, thank you, Bob. So you don't have to navigate through the state website and, pages and pages of documentation to try to find what you're looking for. So this is really meant to simplify things and make it easy to navigate and find the information that businesses are looking for and other kinds of things. So anyway, I'm still working on some graphic design pieces tonight and tomorrow before publishing, hopefully tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to being able to provide this information because I know businesses are having a really hard time trying to just figure out where to start and where to go. And I hope that this will be really helpful for people. So I'm looking forward to sharing that information shortly. I also wanted to do a quick plug for a business survey that myself and Lisa Egan with the Chamber have put together and published. I've just sent the link to Mark, but I can also share it with everyone if I can do this correctly. So it is here. This link, the survey can also be found on the Town of Reading website on the economic development page. This survey is really, really important. It helps us and me continue to advocate in a range of different places, particularly related to policies. So this is important feedback. So please fill out the survey. And it also helps take the temperature of what's going on in town. I've made lots and lots of personalized calls, hundreds of personalized calls over the last few months, helping people, business owners in particular, navigate very specific things and continue to provide business support in that way. But filling out this business survey will really help continue the good work that we're doing. So I think I'll stop there. If you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer that. And I also have continued to update the business support and resource letter, which is also on the Town of Reading Economic Development page as well. I anticipate updating that hopefully tomorrow, in addition to posting the toolkit tomorrow. There's a lot of new information out there, and it's kind of hard to slog through it in real time and also produce a document and get it out. So I'm trying to do all those things all in one go. It's a lot. There's a lot out there. But again, if there are specific questions or businesses need specific help or support, I'm available and happy to speak with anyone over the phone or by email. So I'm always available.
Excellent. Thanks, Erin. Just to confirm, so you're hopefully going to put a lot of that information up tomorrow or very soon thereafter?
Yes.
And the place to get it will be to go to the town website in the economic development section?
There will be a couple of different places. I'll be advertising this widely. So economic development page is where the document will live, and I will point to it, point to that page in a variety of ways. Including through the social media pages and that kind of thing. I'm working with Jane Wellman on the best couple of different approaches to make sure that I get the word out. I'll also be personally contacting individual businesses that I've been in contact with, and then also working through the chamber to get the information out as well. Basically spreading, working the network as much as possible. So that's where we are.
Awesome. Questions from board members?
Just a quick comment from Anne. Erin, I just wanted to say I'm always very impressed with your presentations, and I just wanted to commend you on how you've adapted your role and risen to the challenges of this time. So thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I think that economic development, the meaning of it, the core of it changed a little bit last couple of months. So yes, absolutely, been fantastic. And I think it's great that we have you as a resource for this. And people who haven't already reached out, please do. You've got a dedicated resource here who can really help you with these things. So it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and my reach is limited to my contact information is really based on I have been in town less than a year, so I'm still expanding my own network. So I apologize to anyone I haven't personally reached out to. That's my goal, and I really want to make sure that I'm contacting someone. So I always ask businesses who I've contacted, are there 3 people or 3 businesses that at least who you think I need to be reaching out to right now? So again, if you if you want me to connect with you, please let me know. And if I haven't connected with you and you need some resources or information, I'm again available by email and phone. All of my information is listed in a bunch of different places, including the economic development page on the town. But please reach out. I know I'm not touching everyone.
Awesome. Thanks. Any other, Carlo, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, no, Erin, I want to say thank you for making the page very user-friendly, because that's very helpful, and what you described tonight is even more helpful. And I know this is a long shot, but has there been any activity on our commercial spaces that are currently empty or the ones that are coming online?
Activity, do you mean, are they filled or?
No, prospective new tenants.
Yeah, so I can't speak to that fully, but what I can say is we're definitely working on that. One of the things that I could add there is the town just invested in Business Analyst, which it's a GIS tool, it's a mapping tool, and also has a lot of data in the background to produce maps and things like that. Many businesses don't necessarily have access to a level of data that might be helpful to making business decisions. So I will be one, learning that tool, and 2, producing some more helpful information and data analytics to be able to provide something that businesses may not otherwise have available to them. So I'm hoping that will be a major tool that will help us in town be able to attract and retain businesses and have some real data behind helping businesses make informed decisions. So I'm really looking forward to being able to utilize that tool.
Awesome. Jean and Erin and Bob, I know we spoke, and maybe it was 3 weeks ago, I don't remember, but the idea that there may be some opportunities to talk about creative arrangements of outdoor seating space, to explore those. What would be the way for a business that could have some interest to approach the town, or any updates you might be able to share on that?
Sure. So on the economic development page, I just published a letter for licensed food establishments. It's a licensed food establishment checklist, and I will quickly put the link there in the box for everyone. This information is just state and local requirements. The town also has floor plans on file. We recognize that businesses, including food establishments, but not only food establishments, but food establishments in particular are really needing this more than ever, is to modify floor plans. We have all floor plans on file. You can submit, if you need a floor plan, we need modified floor plans on file to know how the floor plans have been adjusted. If you need floor plans from us if you need your own file to look back on, you can contact Jean and she can help you with that. The other piece is we also have an outdoor seating policy and application that is located here on this website, on my page in this letter. And you can fill that application out, and I believe that Jane is receiving those applications and reviewing those applications. Internally, we are also knowing that this outdoor seating policy may need some revisions, and that businesses may want to expand even further beyond or need to. So we have a whole team that just started coming together earlier this week to really think through some policy changes regarding space usage, not only for restaurants, but also thinking about rolling out the sidewalks for all of our businesses. Sidewalks, we're looking at parking lot spaces and, space, on-street parking spaces, that kind of thing. So there are many cities and towns, I'm sure you've seen and read this already, of street closures and allowing for businesses to just take up physically more space beyond their brick and mortar store. So we're looking at all of these opportunities and thinking about how that may or may not fit for us. But for sure, we want to be supporting businesses and recognize that all businesses, including restaurants, will need additional physical space as we also have weather, hot weather and cold weather. So I'm really thinking forward to the fall, winter, and what that might look like too, in terms of needing additional square footage for businesses to keep operating, if that's how this thing is going to go. So we're flexible. We want to offer maximum flexibility, and we're working with individual businesses to receive input and feedback. Individual businesses know what works for them. And, sometimes we're not the operator, so we don't know we don't know a lot of the details about how a business operates. So I'm speaking with many different businesses on, understanding what their plans might be and what they might need from us. So I'm always flexible and open to any ideas, big or small.
Awesome. And I know that the Board of Health has been very supportive in the health department of kind of helping these ideas germinate, which would be great.
Yep.
Super. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? And I can't see your face, so I have to get your verbal.
No further question or comments. Thank you, Mark.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Erin, very much for coming in today.
Welcome.
And please keep us included in terms of what's happening. Anytime that you'd like to share some other information, we'd love to have you come in and speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
Awesome. Next, Sharon, Town Accountant Quarterly Report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to give you a quick quarterly review, and then we'll go into those finance policies, the select board finance policies. First thing I wanted to mention was in the beginning of March, our fiscal 19 audit was finalized, but we have not met with the audit committee because of the pandemic and the social distancing. The auditors think it will be easier to meet in person, so they like to wait and see if that's possible, because it is hard. I mean, the financials are about 100 pages long, and so it would be a harder presentation for them to do remotely. So we're seeing if we can schedule that soon, within the next couple months, hopefully. But the audit has been complete. There are no findings. It is a clean audit. So I figured I'd mention that because we haven't spoke of that. The other thing that is going on is just this past week, the treasurer completed the investment agreement and sent in the packet to invest the OPEB funds with the state Retiree Benefit Trust Fund, which is just investing our OPEB funds with the state, allowing us to invest at PRIT. The next meeting for that board is June 4th at 9:30. Hopefully they still meet. If they approve our application, we'll be able to transfer the funds that we have existing in our OPEB trust to PRIT and start getting better returns. I think we're getting about 3% on what we're investing in now. Hopefully we could get better with PRIT, hopefully. So that's progress.
Can I interrupt just for a sec? Can you, for board members who don't know what PRIT is and kind of what the issue has been with the investment of those funds, could you just maybe give a 1 or 2 minute overview of the benefits of this?
Oh, in terms of why PRIT would be a better. So when we invest, the treasurer invests the money for the town, and they have a legal list of investments that they can invest in, and it's very limited. So there's not a lot of options that are going to yield what PRIT provides. So PRIT actually invests all the pension funds that we currently have. And there was legislation years ago that would allow us to pool in with the state and invest our OPEB funds in a similar fashion as we do with pension. And at PRIT, it's basically a pension. I remember what PRIT stands for, pension reserve. They basically are doing the whole states, pretty much, pension, retirement, investment, and now OPEB. And so we've been working on this for a long time. When it first came out, the legislation was very unclear. There were some things that were definitely going to be problematic, and we waited for new legislation to come out to correct those issues. And now we finally have our trust document in place, which the select board did accept back in October, but there was like a 6-month grace period before that would be an active agreement or a trust document. Now that 6 months has passed and we're able to apply, and the next meeting is June 4th. So if the board accepts us as part of that grouping, that they accept our application, find it's complete, then we can start investing our money with PRIT. And PRIT has returns. I think their long-term return is, somewhere in that 9% range. I don't know that that's what you're going to see this year, but in general, long-term, they do yield a lot higher rate of return than we can do ourselves with the legal list of investments that the treasurer is bound by. And so it seems to be the best option for us.
Right. And the other piece of that is that as we look at funding our liabilities and what we're going to need to pay out, the assumptions that are built into that aren't down at like 3 or 4%. They're dramatically higher. So if we were limited to just 3 or 4% CDs and returns like that, our liability actually would
it gets bigger, yeah. And so the quicker we get the funds into PRIT, the better, because we're going to start to yield better returns than what we've had just holding it where we have it. So that's good news. Hopefully they do meet. That's the only thing. I don't know if they met last month because of the pandemic. I'm hoping that, knowing that there's an application out there of a community that's looking to invest with them, that they will in fact meet and will get approved. And then all that needs to be done is transfer the funds to PRIT.
Awesome. Thanks, Sharon.
So that's the first thing. I'm going to share the screen with you so that you can see the next portion. I'm just going to give you a financial update. Can everybody see that?
Yes, just now. Yep.
All right, I'm going to move you guys to the side a little bit because I can't see the side. So this here is the general fund revenues as of May 15th, 2020. This report I look at frequently each month because it actually tells us where we are in terms of budget, but also where we were at the same time last year. Now, it should probably be mentioned that this report is being run and compared to May 31st, 2019, because I wanted to get the most up-to-date numbers. So obviously 2019 has 2 more weeks of collections than what we would have had at May 15th. But what you can see is that we are lagging behind where we were last year by like just under 4%. But like I said, there's 2 extra weeks there in May 31st, 2019. And I've highlighted some of the areas where we're seeing lagging that we haven't seen in the past. Motor vehicle excise is, lagging significantly behind where it had been in the past. And we've been seeing that number be a great number for us for years. And so this number is definitely lagging quite a bit. And when I looked at the commitments, the first 2 commitments of both years, they are very similar in size. So it's not that the commitments aren't of a similar size, it's that the collections is slow. And it could very well be the legislation that says, if you pay by, June 30th, you're not going to pay any demand fees or interest. So that could be the reason we're seeing the delay. I will say that in 19, I think we had a 3rd commitment in May, and I do not see one in 20. And I would suspect that we wouldn't see as much at the end of the year as we did in 19, because I would suspect people aren't buying cars right now. So I'm guessing that we might overall have less in commitments in 20 than we would have in 19, because there was a 3rd commitment in 19, and I do not see one at this point for 20. But I feel like the collections might be lagging for the reason of the legislation that's giving them that no demand fee, no interest if paid by June 30th. That's also going to impact our penalties and interest, because by now we would have already put a demand on those excise tax bills and interest. And so I think you're going to see that penalties and interest are also going to be impacted, and they are so far. And then other excise taxes is meals tax. We get that money quarterly from the state. We've received 3 quarters, and we're averaging about $116,000 a quarter. Obviously, this last quarter of fiscal 20 looks to be probably going to be a lot lower than what the other quarters would be, given that so many restaurants were forced to close. Some are doing well because they are doing takeout, but I would say that we're still okay in this regard because we only have 51,000 left to collect. So I would hope, even with a significant decrease in excise tax, that we'd still make that line item in terms of what we projected at 400,000. Another item I figured I would mention is the federal revenue. That actually is a Medicaid reimbursement on the school side. And we're just a little delayed there this year. Apparently some changes were made in the reimbursement process that were quite laborious. We do have a couple of reimbursements that are out there. We have not collected the cash yet, but hopefully we'll get that by June 30th. The most positive thing we got to look at here is that the interest income, or the earnings on investments, is much higher than, it's over 500,000 more than what we had projected. So that's helping us with some of the lagging revenues that we're seeing in the other areas. That's very helpful that we have that. Overall, we're at 96.5% collected as of May 15th. And so down below, I put how much we have left to collect by June 30th to get to the projection that we did, and that was just over $3.6 million. But we do still have 2 state aid payments that are, from what I understand, not going to be cut. They're going to be guaranteed to us, and that they're about almost $2.4 million. So we have about just under $1.3 million that needs to be collected by June 30th to make our projection. And so I did run the numbers again today just to see where we are today, and that number is now like $1 million. So we've collected over 200,000 in the few days since I ran this report. So I'm hopeful that we will, in fact, make our projections for revenue, given that so much of what we have left to collect is state aid. But time will tell, I guess. So I figured that's important. And this is not typical. I mean, you can see in the prior year, we were 100% collected by this time of the year. I do feel like the legislation is causing some slow of the payments. The next slide is the water fund. And it's same sort of report. It's actually a couple of pages long, so I'll get to the second page, but you'll see that, again, we're looking at May 31st, 2019 as compared to May 15th. And we can see that we are lagging in our user charges, which is the majority of what we're collecting in revenues here, quite a bit. But we are at 92.9%, and we have 520,000 left to collect. But I will say that when I looked today, we only had 393 left to collect. So I do think we'll get there. We're not going to see the huge regeneration numbers, I don't think, that we've seen in prior years in the revenue side on any fund, I don't think, because I feel like revenues have been slowed that much. But I could be wrong, we might see some. I'm just hoping that we get all the revenues. And it does feel like we're getting there. I mean, on the 15th, we had 520,000 left to collect, and today we had 393. So we're moving closer to that number. Sewer, same sort of situation. You can see that we're lagging what we looked like last year. And then when you go down to the bottom, we're at 92.5. Is that right? Oh, sorry, 93.1. With 514 remaining to be collected as of the time that I was doing this report for you. But as of today, it's only 380,000. So we are collecting. The other thing that could be part of the numbers looking as low is because we've had to socially distance and have less people in the office, payments are not as quickly being processed as what it would be with full staffing in the office. Things are posted much faster when everyone is in the office. So that could be part of it as well. I mean, people are definitely working remotely and doing what they can to process, but it's always more ideal to be in the office, to have all the equipment you have in the office to do what you need to do. So that could be a factor as well. Stormwater is actually collected more than their projection, which was exciting to see. At this point, we had about 35,000 over projection on May 15th. And I think when I looked at it today, it was somewhere in the 45,000. over projections. So at least there's no concern in that regard that we won't make revenue projections in stormwater. This report I usually show you is the general fund expenses, and it's run as closely as I can to what it looks like when we voted at town meeting. And I look at this high level to figure out if anything looks like it's trending high. Salaries usually tend to be expended equally across the year. And so I can, look at where we are in the year and kind of look at it baseline and say, what kind of percentage would I expect to see? And anything sit outside my expectations. And nothing is sitting outside of my expectations for salaries. Obviously, expenses aren't expended equally across the years, but nobody's close to being overexpended, or at least in the grouping that you're looking at here. Nothing concerned me here. We do year-to-date budget reports to the department heads every month that I review as well, and that's a lot more detail, but it would be a lot to show you that, so that's why you see it in a summary format. This next page shows different accounts. And you can see that the percentages are still, within reason, nobody looking like they're, about to run a deficit in their expenses or anything of that nature. The one area that doesn't run perfectly on this report is this DPW, trash, snow, and street lighting. They mix them all together. If you look at our warrant book for town meeting, each one of those lines are voted individually. But that number stood out to me as high, and so I looked at each and every one of those to make sure that none of them were over by themselves. So snow and ice had 51,000 remaining, street lighting had 75,000 remaining, and rubbish had 45,000 remaining. And I would hope we're not going to see any more snow. So I think we should be good there. And those budgets are all bottom line. They're not done expenses and salaries. They're just done bottom line. So we're good there. This number here looked very strange to me, and it's because that's debt issuance costs that we had this year, but those are netted against premiums. But this report is just showing you expenses, so it just looks utterly bizarre here, so I figured I would mention it. These are the enterprise funds, so sewer, water, and stormwater, their expenses. Looking at, does anything look concerning, high level, something that could show you guys that wouldn't be too detailed, but give you a feel for where they are in terms of how much of their expenses they've expended. Reasonable percentages. Stormwater is lagging, but they tend to be a lot lower than water and sewer at this point. But I remember speaking with Jane Kinsella regarding this, just because it's been a question I've asked every time I do the quarterly. And for a period of time, we had 2 employees working in stormwater, and then one was out. And then they've since replaced that person with somebody that makes less. So there's definitely savings built in also, along with having a position open for a period of time. So that 54% is low for this time of year, but that's the reasoning behind it. And I think part of the what they do there is mostly projects, and I don't think that they're doing as much during the pandemic as maybe they would be at this time of year. So that's the expense side. So this page is just showing you the section I'm going to go over with you in terms of the select board financial matters section of your policies. So maybe I should stop there, and because I can go over that with you as well and see if you have questions about the financial piece, and then we can move forward with the finance select board policies.
Any questions from the board?
Mark, I have a question.
Please, Karen.
Sharon, thanks for coming, and thanks for all of that. Question, getting back to the interest on investments. Any ideas as to that fluctuation? Was that due to interest rates? Does that reflect what we earn on our free cash balance?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I was just wondering about the uptick in interest on investments. I was wondering what gets included in interest on investments, and I was wondering if this variation, you mentioned it was about $500,000, was strictly to interest rate changes.
It's largely due to interest rate changes, and it has been trending upward for the last few years. A couple of years we've been over. I can't increase the projections more than, I think it's 8% before DOR starts pushing back at me and saying, I don't think so, because sometimes things are one-offs. And so it kind of worked to our advantage that I wasn't able to kind of put it where it may definitely be, where based on where the interest rates were, we couldn't really go to what we think the number would be, largely because DOR kind of restricts you. But we're pretty conservative anyway. We probably would never have put the number where we thought it would be, because it's hard to know. Interest rates change. The environment is changing currently. So it's hard to know where that number would be. And we're always very cautious about that number anyway, because there are some years where we have quite a bit of investment return because we're holding capital money. And that money isn't always there. So we don't want it to be an up and down sort of thing. We want it to be kind of a smooth revenue projection. And so I feel like that number, we try and be careful that, looking at it and saying, is some of this number because we were holding cash related to a project and that won't be there next year. But also we want to be cognizant of the fact that interest rates are up and down, and you just don't know where you're going to end up in the next fiscal year when we're doing our projections of revenue. And so it actually worked out in our advantage that we have this projected a little bit lower because so many things are lagging right now related to motor vehicle excise and in other areas of our local receipts that we were hoping to do better. So, and that's kind of a good buffer that's there.
So I was just wondering, so when we talk about a free cash balance, is that also, does that also contribute to this interest on investments?
Yes.
Excluded from this.
Yeah, I mean, whatever cash isn't needed to be liquid, the treasurer is always trying to get the best return on, and he does CDARs and short term and some things long term to try to get the best return we can get. But like I said, he's got a legal list of investments that he can invest in, and they're not going to yield anything close to like what we could invest in the stock market. It's got to be, the safer investment choices.
Sure. No, I just didn't even know if you were allowed to include free cash in this category. Just curious.
It was kind of built into the cash that's sitting in your.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? All good? All right, please roll on, Sharon.
So the next section is the finance or financial matters, section 1.6 of the select board policies. I was asked to review this section. And in doing so, I read through all that was there. And then I did some review of other towns, cities and towns, and what they have for policies of this nature. And I updated them the best I could and sent them off to council. The one thing that I noted was that the fraud policies, I felt the need to kind of looking at what others had, I felt the need to take a step back and rewrite them completely and then compare them to what they were. So it looks like a lot of changes, but the content isn't drastically changed. It's that I took a different approach with that section, given that I was looking at so many other communities and kind of the best of what I've seen in the policies and tried to put it all together and then go back and look at what do we have. And so the section that I sent for fraud to the town council was the one that I rewrote. Obviously this is the select board's policy. So if they do not like anything I put in there or have any comment or any revision, obviously that is something we can talk about and change. But the big things that we had was the acceptance of gifts and donations was the only section where I felt like town council had the changes that you're seeing here are from town council. The first one here, I think it's just kind of to be cautious about the taxability of donations. The way it's worded, it's just maybe not ideal. And they put in the town will provide a receipt to donor upon the acceptance of the donation, but it makes no guarantee of tax deductibility. Donations to the town are tax deductible to the extent permitted by law, and law can change. And donors should consult their tax professional. That way if anything does change, we're not guaranteeing tax deductibility. And so that was a change that town council felt was necessary, and I totally agreed with. The next section was deleted altogether, and the reason I deleted it was because town council said that she did not support the use of municipal staff to fundraise on behalf of the town. And so she advised me to take it out. And so that's why you see that stricken here.
Sharon, before you move past that, I noticed that the limit on donations is $5,000. How long has that been the number? And is that kind of a state mandated number, or could it be higher?
I actually didn't look into that. I'm not sure. The value of the donation was $5,000. It didn't even rise to look it up and see if that's a state requirement that it can only be 5,000 or less. So I can look into that because I know that you're going to have a hearing on this next week. That didn't actually rise to my attention. So that is something I can look into and get you an answer for that. I do not know. I was looking through it to make sure it made sense to me what was there, but I probably should have looked at that number and see if that's changed legally. Yeah. Town council did not change it, so I'm guessing that it's not something. I'm guessing that the state law, if it is a law that's putting that at $5,000, hasn't changed because
I don't think there's a law. I think what this says is any donation more than 5,000 needs to be accepted by the select board. That a department head can accept 5,000 or below, and that's your choice.
Yeah, but I think he's asking, is there a statute that says that the select board has to do that? That's where the limit.
I don't think so.
No, sorry. Actually, Bob is right. I misread it. I was reading it more as that's the maximum
that we
can accept.
I thought you were asking me, is there a statute that says that the select board has to approve over 5,000? So I misunderstood. And if you want, I can find out if there's anything out there, but I did have counsel look at this and they did not mention anything about it.
I'm actually, thanks, Bob. I'm actually more comfortable with it this way, that, up to 5,000 a department head could accept. And then as the numbers are higher, that comes before the board.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Anne. I have a question, if I could, before we move on to the next section.
Mm-hmm.
So I had actually wondered before your presentation if some of these changes might have been prompted by the new structure for the Reading Coalition for Prevention and Support. Because when we were looking at that on the ad hoc committee, I understand part of that is that no town employees or volunteers could fundraise on behalf of the Reading Coalition. So it sounds like this wasn't prompted by the new ARCASA structure, but is in keeping with it. Does that sound right?
Yes, I'd say that's correct. I think that council has always felt that this is not something that we should have had in our policies, and it's been there for a while. So it was definitely brought to light with the ARCASA. We had discussions about it. But yes, it's definitely something that has been there a long time that we should have probably revisited a while ago.
To my knowledge, this really hasn't been used except maybe when the Fall Street Fair first started up. Which is, I don't know, 10 years or 12 years ago. It's not something that's come up, certainly not something we're engaged in.
When I go to scroll down, it doesn't look like it's giving me the next page, which is weird.
It's not. I think it needs to catch up. I think you're selected. You can unselect that first page. Where it's
okay. Blue. And that will make it.
No, that didn't do it either.
Let me look at this.
Sometimes it's just a size of document and timing issue if you refresh or wait.
Okay, let's wait.
Tell a story.
I know, right? What's interesting is that the rest of the sections don't have any changes proposed with the exception of fraud. So maybe if I go down further, let's see if it shows. No, it's definitely just like, it seems like it's taking a while to load the document. I thought it'd be easier to look at it in this fashion because it's your select board packet and everything's one after another, but it's not loading.
Let me see if I can share a version.
Yeah, try that, Bob, or if not, I've got it on my screen as well. I could share it.
Wonder if I...
Let me give it a shot here. Karen, can you stop sharing a screen?
Yep. Let me stop.
See, how does that look?
Oh, yeah.
Small, but good.
That's good. But now I can't move it because...
I'll move it. You just tell me what to do.
All right, so
maximize a little bit.
All of the section here that's being taken out is all related to fundraising being done by employees. So she asked me to take all of that out, and so I did. And then obviously that meant I had to, that was a whole section, so I had to just renumber, so you can see renumbering happening. Moving to the next, you can see that I did track the changes. This is where the fraud section starts. But I did provide you an Excel spreadsheet thinking that might be a little easier to see what it was and then what I'm proposing it to be. As I said, I just kind of rewrote it. A lot of the content, if you read through it, it's not vastly different, except that I worded things differently. The one thing that would be helpful. Thank you, Bob. So I felt like this might be a good way to look at it in terms of the original section, what it looked like, and then what I proposed when I wrote it myself, and then just compare them. And it's just wording changing. It's not changing content a lot. The only section where I really felt that some of the changes were going to be seen was, let me see, sorry, looking at it on my screen. Only changes that I actually noted were that under responsibilities and who's responsible for oversight, what I saw in a lot of other towns was here in Reading, me as the town accountant was in charge of all the investigating and oversight of all the fraud. In other communities, they had the town manager or town administrator. And I think it was largely because I don't have the power to do disciplinary action. It is usually assigned by the town manager to the town accountant, but not giving me the power to be the one in charge. And so you'll notice that when you look at the sections related to responsibilities, you'll see the town manager saying that the town manager is the primary responsible because he's of a higher level of authority and has the ability to decide on disciplinary action if it's needed. And so when town council had reviewed this, they agreed that it usually is a town manager being the primary person, and they usually do delegate out to the town accountant to do investigative work, sometimes the chief of police, whatever, depending on what the situation is that arises. And the town manager has authority over all of those positions and can assign those things and delegate things. And so it seems like changing this to town manager as opposed to having town accountant cited as the person in charge of the investigation was the way to go, but that's obviously up to you. And if you scroll down further, town manager is mentioned again in terms of reporting back to the town. There's a section, when I'm not able to scroll, I can't find it. There's a section that talks about, I had originally said the town accountant would do a report and report back on the investigation. And town council had asked me to change it to town manager. And then in talking to Bob, I said, why don't we put town accountant and town manager will do a report to summarize the investigation. So those are the things that are primarily different about what the original was compared to the revised, is the changing of the responsibility being overall the town manager, the one that would oversee everything because of their ability to discipline and delegate to all, department heads, part of this investigative work. And you can see that there, investigation of the town accountant and or appropriate law enforcement officials like the chief of police, town council would be involved. So when you read through those sections, those are the sections where you'd see the most difference, because it would be the town accountant will do this, you would contact the town accountant. A lot of this section is talking about if there is suspected fraud or if there is any incident of fraud, that it should be reported to the town manager. The town manager should always be aware. It shouldn't come directly to the town accountant. Of course, he's going to involve me in that correspondence and help, point me in the direction of what needs to be done. But there should never be a circumstance where the town manager isn't aware of a potential fraud that could be going on. And so I felt that that was probably a valid point, and that's why I changed everything from town accountant to town manager. But then again, it is still up to you guys what you would like it to say. So here's the section that I was referring to. The town manager and the town accountant will prepare a report of the results of any review of fraudulent or irregular activities. So this was the way I chose to present it to you, because I felt like the track changes was very confusing to look at, given the way I had done it, just rewriting the sections. I do not feel the content of it is largely changed, except for what I just mentioned, which was changing from me to the town manager being the higher responsibility of oversight. And and the rest of it didn't change very much at all. If you read through both the original and the revised, you'd find the content, it might be worded differently, but it's fairly similar. The track changes, I felt like it was too much to look at, putting them side by side and looking at each section of the fraud oversight. And reading each section, you can see it a little easier on the Excel, I felt. Is there anything specific you'd want me to talk about, or would you want me to go over each section individually? I took for granted that you would have, time to look at it and have questions, but if you want me to, we could go one by one and read what the original was and what the revised is. I just don't want to do that if that's not helpful.
I think I'm fine kind of reading through it myself, but how do other people feel?
I read through it, everything in the packet, and I'm comfortable with changes that were made. This was a lot of work. Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks.
Carlo, you have a question here?
No, Mark, I read it. I'm not an attorney, but it seems pretty thorough. Thank you. I knew there was a section, and Bob, don't take this the wrong way. If there's town manager fraud, then it becomes the select board's call to investigate, correct?
Yes, I think that was explicitly stated, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that the town council really wanted to be sure that the town manager was mentioned in the policy, and that that all correspondence goes through him, because he should never not be aware of any potential fraud that could be going on, unless, of course, it involves him, in which case there's guidelines. So if you suspect that he's the person that's of interest, how to report that. But the town manager should always be aware of whatever could potentially be going wrong or suspected fraud.
It makes sense that the town accountant investigates and the town manager has to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And if the town accountant's not satisfied, the town accountant reports to the select board and can have a discussion.
It seemed reasonable for that change to be made, but that, again, it's up to you guys.
Sharon, did you have any discussion about when and where the finance committee and their investigative powers might get involved?
Where this is just your select board policies, they are involved in terms of if there is a fraud to be identified, that they have to be, I believe in a section at the end where if there is an identified fraud that's over a certain dollar amount, the audit committee, the chairman of the select board, all of them would have to be notified that something has happened, especially if it's over a certain dollar amount. I want to say it's $2,500. But they do have their, the policies that are FinCom are separate from the policies that are select board. So they do have investigative powers, just being FinCom. That right. Learned when we had that truck incident where they were able to actually investigate that just on their own. So yeah, it's a little bit out. I mean, obviously it falls under our fraud policies, but they have their own policies as well.
Got it. And the chair of the audit committee, I believe, is the chair of FinCom, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Since I've been here, it always is. And I just took that for granted that that's always the case. I don't know if it ever varies from that, but it's always been since I've been here that the FinCom chair is the audit committee chair.
Yep. No, I remember serving in that role many times.
One minor point, we may want to change chairman to chair or chairperson, given we've moved from Board of Selectmen to Select Board, and we've changed all of our town bylaws to become gender neutral.
I apologize. That's valid.
On that.
No apology necessary.
I think I saw Bob send me a message of the same kind of thing come up on my screen. I don't know why that escaped my attention.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
No, this was a big project. Thank you. It's Good, we won't be doing any more fundraising by town staff. Great.
It was in there. I don't really think I've ever seen town members actively promoting fundraising. You know, it's usually through friends groups, which I think is allowed, but I don't think that I've ever seen anything that was going against what town council was advising. So.
Great. Okay. So if there are no further questions, the next step is next week we will have a public hearing about this. And Bob, for select board policies, it's been our practice to have public hearings. Is that correct? As opposed to an absolute requirement?
That's exactly right. I advertise as a public hearing, but it's not legally required.
Okay. No
So
worries.
that when they would vote on this at the hearing next week?
That's right.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Sharon. That's
Thank you.
end of
Thank you,
section,
Sharon.
yes.
Am I still sharing a screen? No, Bob shared the
I
screen.
stopped.
Right. Okay, where are we on time? Oh, we're running a few minutes ahead. This is great. Would folks like to take a couple of minute break and stretch? Maybe we could come back at 9:05, take 10 minutes. Why don't we do that? So please, everybody, mute your sound and your screen. And okay, so we are going to take a quick 10-minute recess, and then we'll be back. 9:05, please.
Great idea.
update on town manager goals. Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Can everyone see a screen that's shared?
Yes.
Okay. I'll go at a slightly slower pace than the past, especially because we have 2 new board members, but any guidance to speed me up or slow me down is certainly welcome at any time. I'm going to give a quick snapshot of an overview, and then we'll go one goal at a time. The select board has given me and staff 12 goals, 3 different areas: community, policy, and operations, 4 goals each. As you can see in this column, duration, some of the goals are multi-year goals by design. Some of them may turn into multi-year by happenstance. And then this was a report card, if you will, in terms of progress made, which I'll get to. These are the chairs of the goals, and these are members of the team. Certainly there are other members that have also worked on many of these. Broadly speaking, 8 of the 12 goals are completed. Those are the ones with 100, and I gave emergency management a yikes. 3 goals have been suspended. I'll also get to that. We really can't make meaningful progress on some of them because of the pandemic. And then one of them that was described earlier, volunteerism, we'll discuss. So first, community conversations, which are meant to be a multi-year goal. Clearly, there's been a shift. The library is actively engaged and used this last 2 months of an opportunity to shift to a virtual environment, and they've tested out some things. Mark, you heard that's the kind of Zoom software they had. That's one of the reasons they have that. Realistically, no one really can predict much in the future, but Amy thought it was sensible to push for fall of 2020 as the earliest time to try to gather any kind of effort on this, figuring that aside from the near term, that folks usually go away in the summer, and we just didn't want to rely on them being around this summer. So those of you that have been involved in this effort, which is many of the board members in the past, understand it's a gathering on specific topics. It's been a really interesting turnout, people that we don't normally see, or I don't normally see at public meetings, and the discussions have been really quite frank. I would say that this goal is not materially changed through the pandemic and the outlook in the future. It has been slowed down a few months. There would have been probably 2 meetings that we'll miss. One was geared for March, and one was aimed at June, potentially. Those will be delayed, certainly. But if any of the board members that have participated, if you want to make any comments, I think it's also helpful for the new members to get a little more color on some of these goals where you have participated.
I'll chime in. I think it was a great opportunity to listen to, again, some different faces, some from folks who aren't necessarily coming to lots and lots of public meetings. It was more, individuals from the community who came in to share some of their concerns. Oftentimes, I think oftentimes they were newer to the community as opposed to folks that had been here for a very long period of time. And they were very open and willing to share their concerns, things that they expected, things that they found, things that they didn't expect, and their hopes and what they'd like to see happen. And it was nice to be a participant as opposed to a facilitator, and to do a lot of listening into the sessions. I've attended, I think, 2 of them.
I've also attended several. They've been very capably facilitated. It's been a great opportunity to meet members of the community who don't always attend nighttime government meetings, although certainly you will see frequent flyers there as well. But it's been a really rich conversation, and I certainly think it's been very worthwhile.
So Amy and I chatted about this briefly. I think it was last Thursday. Time lost its meaning. So I don't believe that they have a topic set up yet for the fall, but that's certainly something that we'll keep the board involved with. In the past, they've sometimes had a list of topics and asked for feedback. So we'll see how that goes. But clearly, we're done on this goal other than them testing the technology for this year. And really, we made about as much progress as we would have hoped. Again, being short an opportunity to actually have a meeting. But that will proceed in the future, and it's important for all members that participate, including the board when they do, to give feedback. As that's what Amy's group has been really good about, adapting and changing as needed when they get feedback about what's working or what's not working. Next goal is volunteerism. One thing we've learned from the pandemic certainly is the town has plenty of volunteers. We had way more volunteers than we've been able to use so far, which is the proverbial high-class problem. The command staff tried to rotate the volunteers today so that most of the volunteers, non-staff volunteers at the mask giveaway today had not worked previously. And as a reminder, there was the giveaway today and the last time, but there was also a significant volunteer effort the day before to stuff the masks in the bags. So there's really a really nice turnout. And that tells us, pandemic or no, that the volunteer base is still there. And I think all of us, you and staff, need to have a discussion of what to do going forward. And if you would prefer staff to sort of take a stab at it and go, we will. But in the past, the board has talked about writing its own ship in terms of an onboarding policy and then wanting to lead the effort, which I think makes sense. But again, we're willing to do whatever it is you'd like us to do. But we really are at a point now where we need to understand what the board's desires and intentions are. I think one of the discussion points, which I did mention earlier, is do we want to encourage volunteers to apply for a specific position, meaning they need to search out that description and that knowledge, or do you want to create more of a funnel that will lead the person into a group of opportunities? And Mark commented, and we've had this discussion before, some volunteers have expressed a tremendous satisfaction when they've served on more than one board. And they feel that the perspective they bring from one board to the next board to the next board is really helpful, even sometimes when the boards are completely unrelated. So I know some of your predecessors in your chairs now spent 10 and 20 years in things like CPDC and other boards that were completely unrelated to select board. But the more that you see how the organization as a breadth operates, I think the better job you can do and the better understanding you bring. So those are some things for the board to discuss. Whether that's grounds for a future agenda item here or a retreat of some sort, I don't really know. But volunteers are clearly a tremendous asset in this town. And they're used well now. It's not that there's a problem. It's just, do you have room for making any changes or opportunities? And I think the other thing that's changed in the last 2 months is the technology we're using now may open up the volunteer pool even wider. There could be people that didn't have time to come to town hall. They might be running late sometimes from work, not in Reading. And to know that they don't have to physically show up at town hall at 7:30 may be an attraction if they can participate remotely. From what I've seen, I think the Zoom meetings, except for the public participation, have been very good. Clearly the public participation is not as good, and it's hard to make it that. But if you think back to the remote participation days when select board members would phone in, I think this technology is far superior.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if the board has any comments to make at this time. If not, I'll move on.
I'd very much like for this to be one of the items that we talk about at a retreat, which is the next item we'll talk about tonight.
Okay. Goal 3 was economic development, specifically in the downtown area. As Erin may have shown you, she is almost single-handedly being the downtown district management entity. She's worked very well with the chamber, certainly, so not to leave them out. But we've met a few times. She referred to a meeting we had earlier this week, and we lamented the fact that there isn't this group to be sitting at the table with us now during a crisis, when it would be really helpful to have a unified voice in some way from the downtown businesses. But we'll certainly do the best we can. You know, she didn't want to get into a lot of discussion today, but I'll just share with you that we had some very creative ideas thrown about earlier in the week. And the things I mentioned to you were just on liquor licenses, that we need some relaxation at the state level. The goal of the legislation that I've seen is respectfully to eliminate the ABCC from a role. That, for instance, you know, you have a restaurant, you have a seating plan, and you have a capacity, and you have a liquor license. That capacity can no longer be solved within your physical space. You will not be able to have as many people inside your restaurant, inside your bar. What if there was room outside? Kowloon has certainly explored this in Saugus. They're going to put a lot of outside seating. They have a huge parking lot. They can only have 1% of their customers, so the parking is extra. They want to be able to push their liquor license outside. Serving liquor outside has always been a very difficult area because of restrictions and minors and so forth. But we're trying to work quickly with the Senate especially to get changes so that our businesses can survive, basically. So, you know, you're going to see a push towards outside, towards the downtown area. You know, Route 28 makes that certainly challenging on that end, but Haven Street is an area where there's a lot of possibility here. And I still lament the fact the train station, I mean, now it's vacant all the time, but it's always vacant from Friday night to Sunday night. It's just such a tremendous opportunity to use that space somehow. The Fall Street Fair does a great job using a lot of outdoor space. Why couldn't we do that on a regular basis on a much smaller scale? So we're going to use this opportunity to do a lot of creative things. Some will succeed, some will fail, and try to set up not only the business community, but to the extent we're going to one day do downtown streetscape improvements on Haven Street and the downtown, we want to really explore all the possibilities. And it could be things like, I won't say closing Haven Street, because that doesn't really work, but you could certainly close Haven Street on a Sunday to through traffic and have outdoor whatever. So again, you'll see some creative ideas on that. I hope you like some of them. Some of them you might be horrified at. Clearly, downtown parking is on the side now. There's certainly no shortage of parking. I don't see that changing for quite some time. I did want to ask the board a question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, so I won't go into details, but I do want to ask about the second 6 months, and I'll share an email with the chair and the vice chair about the downtown parking permits and a path forward just before we get there. Again, the downtown streetscape, we have developed $7 million worth of improvements. The state had included us to the tune of $5 million in a bond bill. I'd say that's gone from unlikely to impossible. So we'll have to really concentrate on what are the things that we really want to do to help the business community and the residents in the downtown area. I would think that all of you have seen what I've seen, which is more people walking and bicycling in the town than has probably ever happened. I've seen people walking around in my neighborhood that have lived there for 20 years that I've never seen outside their house. So it's just really interesting, and it's really an opportunity for people that have walked around to see what there is. You drive past something every day, you don't notice. You walk past it, you notice a lot more. So we're really trying to, take this unfortunate opportunity and, try to use the downtown very creatively. And we have, to an earlier question on vacancies, Carlo, Erin has approached some of the landlords, not all, that have vacant property, and then some of the new projects that are building space. And my guess is we would like to try to do temporary uses of these spaces over the next year or so, because the appetite for permanent occupants is probably pretty low, at least for the next 6 months. So you might see things like pop-up stores and different, art shows or whatever. Wayfinding is complete. All the signage, I believe, is now up. And that wraps up downtown if you have any questions or comments.
So one of the things I've noticed is that the signage, the new signage in particular, has made a real difference. You can see a lot of the signs guiding you into different locations. Before, the signs seemed small, and maybe it's just my new reality. They seem bigger somehow. I have the impression there are larger signs that are out there at the moment. But it's made a difference in guiding people into Brandy Court and other places like that that weren't there. Is very favorable.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, I'll move to the Eastern Gateway. That's down by the Walkersbrook area. That's something that I've said is on hold. There's no realistic way to have community meetings right now, which was the next step, to do another one of those, maybe at RMLD or some other location. Gather a lot of people. The board has seen different presentations, but our next stop was with the public, and we're going to have to rethink that. The community sort of collaboration and visioning meetings at the library are one thing to do on Zoom, but I'm not too sure we can do an Eastern Gateway meeting on Zoom as easily. We'll see. We'll work on that. We did secure a second grant. Which is terrific. And I should have said that for the downtown area. We're still working on funds for the Eastern Gateway. You'll see in the next 3 meetings, there's an existing applicant that's going to come to you with a request for a liquor license that if it involves axe throwing, then it's going to be creative. I'm not sure that it will, but that was one of the things that was discussed.
Yikes.
What Jean especially identified to us was, I'm sure some of you know that RMLD has finished paving their visitors parking lot. That was always identified as a possible community gathering site. And now that it's really spruced up, they really did a nice job. It certainly could be a location for some kind of an outdoor market. Again, one of these temporary pop-up type of events. Maybe you do a farmer's market, maybe you just do some kind of an arts fest, whatever it is. And I think bringing people down to that section will help them think about, oh, I've never been here before. This is an interesting part of town. And that's one of the things we want to try to show people is it's not far from the downtown from a connectivity standpoint. Certainly the traffic always makes that a challenge, but the traffic being lighter now, maybe it's another opportunity. That's all I have on that goal. Again, that really has to be stopped until the public can gather. Are there any questions or any comments?
Just a quick thought. One of the things that we could do, though, is record a presentation and share it that way, and then encourage people to send in kind of individual feedback. So in other words, the reason that Zoom might not be perfect for that kind of a meeting is just, how do you get sort of the creativity beyond just comment? And maybe a way to do that is kind of spread it out and let people respond to a presentation. In fact, almost have a contest, have people send in their own thoughts and ideas, encourage the input that way, and at least get it started.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Just kind of it's a non-Zoom approach.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Much like the road diet was meant to be held at Staples and gather a lot of the public, they've tried to find alternative ways to publicize that. Whether it's worked or not, I don't know, but yeah, that's the right idea. Next is building security governance. That couldn't start in earnest until we were sure we had a building security project. I'm working with a small group to see about that, and we put the project out to bid, except for the dispatch center, which is a different issue. I want to say in either February or early March. I think we got bids in really before the pandemic was serious. We got very good bids, well below budget. We've been in discussions among ourselves as to how we could proceed. The most significant change is I just didn't see how we could have work done in a school when there's students in the building under any circumstance now. Superintendent quickly agreed with that. But the whole project was designed and bid to be finished by December, January of this winter, meaning a fair amount of work was going to happen in the schools on nights and on weekends. From a public health standpoint, we thought having a contractor in the summer and then deep cleaning the building when they're done, and then when the students are done, they can come back next summer is the only approach right now. So I have an email with a lot of details that I've specifically left until tomorrow. I think we now have a project. I think we'll be able to move forward. Assuming that's the case, we'll know that in another week or so. We can then jump on this building security governance, which will involve the 3 elected boards to some unspecified degree. I think from the discussion at town meeting, I think this is probably the area that most town meeting members were concerned about. It wasn't so much the physical hardware, although to some degree it could have been. It's really, what are my privacy rights? What are you going to do? And I think that'll be a fairly public discussion. That's not really security issues by and large. That's just how are you going to use information? If there's a camera capturing things about patrons at the library, who gets to see that? How long is it kept? What's the privacy issue? And we're all very sensitive to different degrees about that. So I think the policy discussion will help the community go a long way to being more receptive. The unexplored part of this project is the dispatch center. We knew we had to bid that out separately, and we were going to do it after this part. As soon as the pandemic hit, we knew the dispatch was off limits for the foreseeable future. That doesn't necessarily delay the rest of the project. It would delay fully using the technology, but that doesn't make the technology not worthwhile to install. That's still something we'll have to tackle, especially with the police chief, as circumstances warrant, because much like the students, that was going to be a very intrusive construction project into the operation of a police station. The dispatch center was going to move across the hall to what's now a sergeant's room. Sergeants were going to move, I think, upstairs. And construction was going to happen during, well, they're 24/7, but probably during the day and be quite interruptive. They can't afford to be interrupted right now. We can't afford to have people like any people in the building. Again, like schools in a different way, it's just not for the best public health interests. So we're not sure when that part will happen. We might bid it out no sooner than August for some unspecified time right now in the winter, but we'll see how that goes. I don't know if the board has any questions or any comments of the governance part of this goal. That was meant to be a 2-year goal. We're definitely 2 months, 3 months behind of where I thought we'd be. But we have plenty of time next year.
This is not a well thought out comment, but just something to think about. COVID-19 may require new hardware systems, or let's say it could be augmented with new hardware systems. A temperature sensing, or I don't even know what category at this point.
Right.
But it may be that some people are already kind of thinking about what those systems would be, and there may be an opportunity to make that kind of part of the security. Again, it's not well formed yet. I'm just thinking.
You're right. We've thought about that. Our facilities department has already made a lot of improvements that other towns are just thinking about, respectfully. A lot of it will revolve about how the state wants to run public schools, starting in September, one would hope.
Yeah.
And that's just completely an unknown right now. But you're right, there could be, temperature technology needed, lots of obviously, sanitation, which I think we've done a good job. We clearly have room in the security budget the way it is now to make more improvements than maybe we had imagined with leftover money. So, we'll certainly work with the Board of Health and the Health Division on that. Everyone is waiting to see what schools need to do.
Right. I think that airports might be an interesting place to look because I think many of them have already implemented much more advanced health-related systems.
Yeah, from what I've heard, the health issues that they're trying to capture keep evolving, and it's no longer correlated with temperatures, for instance.
Right.
And not very correlated with symptoms. So we'll have to just be flexible.
Yep. Any other questions, comments from the board? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
Mark?
Carl?
I have one for Bob. Bob, you mentioned the bids came under what you budgeted. Was it 5%, 3%, 10%?
It was a couple of $100,000. I think it was more like 10%, ballpark 5 to 10. And the cover bid wasn't too far behind, and then some other bids were further behind. So there was two very interested and very qualified people that bid.
Were they in-state companies or out-of-state companies?
You know, I assume the one that we're negotiating with is in-state, but I haven't actually looked them up, but I'm pretty sure they're a Massachusetts company.
Okay.
Funny, I never thought to really look them up that way.
Mark, can I ask a quick question?
Please, Karen.
Bob, I just wanted to clarify. So you mentioned a $7 million project. Is this different than the road diet project? And you mentioned, I think you said $5 million maybe going away because of this COVID, or was that an Eastern Gateway related project?
That was a downtown improvement project, maybe 2-3 years away. I forget what's in the capital plan now, but let's say it's $1.5 to $2 million of general fund money, which again is just a placeholder.
Mm-hmm.
And then possibly as much as $5 million from the state. So we did identify $7 million worth of improvements, and I just know we're going to have to scale that down and prioritize what's the most important, including potentially doing nothing. There's not a requirement that this done. There's really a requirement that we do some water sewer work underground, and then we have to pave the road when it's done. But aside from that, nothing is required. It's just while we're doing all this, do you want to change the sidewalks? Do you want to change the streetscape, the lighting? That'll be a clear public discussion and decision.
And okay, and this is when we were going to talk about as well electric charging stations, I think, as part of this larger project.
Yep.
So are you thinking this money is just going to evaporate from the state? Is that kind of where you're going with this?
I would say so.
Okay, just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
I'm not sure how immediate it was. Bond bills are a funny thing, but I would just say to the extent we might have hoped to have it in 3 or 4 years, I don't see the point in hoping on that right now. Okay. Maybe it will change in 2 years.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. The next goal is rather interesting. It's employee attraction and retention. It's hard to really describe. As of early March, we are in the most competitive employment market in any of our lives that we can think of. And now we have upwards of 20% unemployment. So it's certainly been a quick 180. It's harder to know further down the road what will happen. My instincts keep telling me it's not going back to the way it was anytime soon, but there's a lot of people that are very optimistic that it will. So none of us know. None of us can really say for sure. Some of the optimism is clearly based on the stock market. And I'll just say what the stock market does is not what the economy does. And we'll just kind of leave it at that. Sean Donahue has been brought back as our HR director. He had worked for the town and the schools until last fall. He'll be in charge of rewriting a personnel policy. We had a draft. He'll bring it to you sometime next fall. It's not clear when. One of the real challenges of our organization is we've been doing a lot of COVID response for the community and for businesses, but we also really need to do it for our own organization. Employees have been remote. There's some I have seen on Zoom, but not in person for 2 months. At some point, and some point soon, we need to focus a lot more of our attention on our own employees and our organization. How do we reopen to the public? How do employees come to work? What do they do? What do they not do? What's safe? We don't know as an employer what the different appetite for coming back to work and what the fears might be, which is true with any employee situation. I suspect, typical of most office environments, that some of the remote work is going to continue. I'm sure the appetite for it is there. And I have to tell you, just using Erin as an example, I haven't seen Erin in person in months. She's just as productive as she was at home as she was here. There's just nothing lost. Sorry to pick on you, Erin.
Yeah,
so that'll be one of the things we really need to focus on, HR issues. The HR landscape is very complex right now. There's federal legislation, the state legislation, and then there's our own policies. And we just have to put it all together. And the department heads and I have had 2 meetings on it. I've talked to Sean extensively about it. But just be aware that much like the budget took me away for a little while, this is going to be an issue that's going to take some of my time over the next month or so, maybe right through the end of the year. I will say that the response of our employees has been really good. I think the community expected that, and I think they've seen that, and I really appreciate the fact that they've appreciated that. Many of our workers have been stopped and complimented from a safe distance in a car, unlike anything that has ever happened in the recent past. And that's really very gratifying, because so many of our employees, that's why they do their jobs. It's for the person that says thank you. It's not for any other reason. So that's really appreciated. We'll have to figure out in the new landscape as an employer, what do we need to be competitive? It's really hard to say. I think it's, again, going to focus on non-financial issues quite a bit, which is typically true in a municipal space. There is still positions that are very hard to fill, from what my peers tell me, though. So there still is a scarcity of certain positions, and the pandemic is not going to change that. So we'll have to be very sensitive to the supply and demand out in the marketplace. But I'm pretty comfortable that we've got a good staff in place. We'll move forward. I don't know if we're going to be as creative in the HR space as we might be in the pop-up business downtown space, but we'll see. And this is an issue that every manager and mayor is struggling with right now. It's the great unknown, is how do you do your work in this new world, and how do you keep your employees safe, the public safe, and from a morale standpoint, how do you keep up morale? So I don't know if there's any comments or questions.
No, I think.
Okay.
Spot on.
Goal 7, both in terms of, I'll do 7 and 8 together. Charter, general bylaw, and zoning bylaw updates. No progress in the last couple months, but none was really expected. There has been a change in the approach by CPDC. They had imagined bringing a handful of zoning amendments to November 2020 town meeting. They had just done some last November. They know they can't possibly do the public outreach process now, and they're not even going to try. Jean thinks that they're predisposed to aim for November town meeting, so it might be November 2021 where you see zoning amendments. And none of the ones they had underway or had thought about were urgent. Whereas last November, there were a couple of issues that were kind of urgent. The bylaw committee, and it's almost time to start talking about another charter committee, has been working on a couple of issues. Some of them were reacting to some issues. They've worked with the elementary space project and the permanent building committee to try to sort out kind of roles and responsibilities. They have not yet picked a meeting date, but I believe they're going to meet in the beginning of June. And if the board, liaison is interested, we'll certainly keep you up to date. If the board is ever interested, they're happy to come in and give an update, or Matt will. I think that general bylaws aside, the charter is something that I think the review is maybe 4 years away or so, 4 or 5. That's not too much time to start thinking about it. You plan for it for a year, you do some work for 2 years, and then all of a sudden you're there. So, that's something that I do want to keep near their front burner if there's nothing urgent. If there's any issues in the town that you want to bring to them, whether it's a bylaw or a charter issue, you should be thinking about that. And lastly, I've thought about, and I really don't know that we have any zoning or general bylaws or charter that needs to change because of the pandemic. I just don't know. It could be zoning might be most likely. You know, if we're going to see a change, a more permanent change in less customers inside a store or a restaurant and more potentially outside, well, we can finesse that over the next year, but we may need to make some changes to some of our laws. And, you know, we don't want to overreact and try to overthink that right now. We need to let things settle out. One of the sort of unsolved topics still is the CPDC especially does extensive work and outreach to the public during any of their zoning bylaw amendment changes. And on the floor of town meeting, it's very clear that some of this material is very new to town meeting members. That's another reason why November's a little bit better, because if you just had an election and a lot of new town meeting members, that's hard to ask them to suddenly sit in an April town meeting on zoning changes. But any advice you have in terms of connecting to the public and to town meeting members especially, you know, would be most welcome. They've tried, and our staff has tried a lot of different things. Maybe now in the remote world, somehow that'll be easier. I don't know. Getting people to come out was always the challenge. Maybe getting them to join a Zoom meeting or something will be easier. I don't know if the board has any questions on the bylaws, the general or zoning or charter.
No questions? Let's roll on.
Okay. The last section I just want to go up here to show you is operations. The first three are done effectively, and then capital we'll have a little discussion on. Our software review and evaluation is complete. Zoom technology somewhat interrupted some of that, and one of our vendors, our permit software, decided to go to a cloud-based solution. And we knew that, but we didn't know we were going to have no choice but to migrate, so that's been a little urgent. So there's been a lot of training on staff in terms of that. Ultimately, that will allow the public to communicate with us much more electronically, which is going to be good. That's something I've always been very interested in. You know, we'll kind of just leave it there and see where it goes. A lot of this work is not things that you would see visibly. It's sort of the plumbing that goes with the house, if you will. We do have some Munis modules that are going to somehow need to be implemented with an HR director that's new, and with our technology staff so busy on remote meeting technology. I'm not sure how we'll squish that in, but we'll figure out a way. But the goal of some of the new Munis modules was to make employees more self-sufficient and have to come into town hall or call town hall less often. So that works very well with the problem we're having now. We're trying to keep people out of town hall. It's just a question of finding the time to do that. Otherwise, I feel like we're in really good shape technologically. If anyone has any questions.
Anybody?
The software coordinator job that was added with the override has been invaluable. The person it was an internal promotion as it turned out, which I didn't know when we posted the job. She's gone from fixing things every day and you know, fixing issues and hardware to being thoughtful and well planned and talking to all the departments philosophically. It's made a huge improvement of how we can work better. Emergency management, I don't know what to say. We're doing a pretty good job.
Very good job.
It's been a very challenging issue. Someday we're going to all sit back and try to summarize what we've been through. Typically with an emergency, it's usually somewhat short duration. Maybe the longest one is 3 days because you have a storm that's coming and then a storm that's done damage. We always sit down with an after action meeting about what went well, what didn't go so well. We've only done that really once so far in the last 6 or 7 weeks, and that's about the only thing I can imagine we could improve at, but it's finding the time. The volume of information coming in and the volume of decisions that need to be made is just really hard to describe. Some of you that have worked with me on a single issue understand that to figure out how to plan a town meeting, for instance, is complicated, and then add in another 50 of those items. And that's what we're facing now as command. Fortunately, we have a really good team that works together well. It would be really hard if we didn't have a good team that worked together well, and I include the schools on that. I have been criticized for adding this as a goal because it caused the pandemic, so I'm not sure if you're superstitious, you believe that or not, but it's possible.
Nope.
I'll just move on. The last two goals are capital, very different types. The first is parks and fields. The rec committee and the rec division, I'm going to say maybe 3 weeks ago, expressed a strong interest in keeping with the capital plan for just $25,000 for next year to do some assessment over the fields and how much space they have and so forth. They even have a couple consultants picked out to send RFPs to. So that's one of the capital items I did not cut. It wasn't a big amount of money, but there were 3 other projects that I'll get to that we did cut. You can see Simon's Way was one of them. Camp Curtis was another, and the senior/community center was the third. Those are all such unknowns right now that we weren't going to make any real progress next year. But I think on the fields project we will. Based on the guidance issued on Monday by the state and our rec director having a call with other rec directors a day or two later, it looks like the state wants to encourage summer programs very much, starting in mid-June, maybe late June. I'm sure they've done a survey and it's come back about 50-50. I forget how many responses they had, but it was a strong number of over 1,000. And about half the parents said, yeah, I want to proceed if I understand the terms, or no, I'm not coming no matter what. As things evolve, some of those numbers may change, but what the rec director told me a day or two ago was we can virtually run none of the programs we used to run this summer. None. Based on the guidance from the state. So they're scrambling to try to come up with programming to offer. And that's no easy thing because you need to either do it yourself, if we don't have a lot of staff, or to find vendors that will do this. And every town's in the same situation. So that's a big wild card. We know the town, some of the town will want this. We'll do the best we can. We tried to think about what things could we be doing, while things changed. For instance, we could have been paving a lot of roads, but the state's already doing that. And, field work and thinking about fields was another thing. If you can't run your normal rec program, well, that gives you a certain amount of time to be a little more creative and a little more thoughtful. So we'll kind of see where all that goes. And to jump right onto the buildings, this one's, I think, the more challenging one. I haven't even asked the superintendent for an update on elementary school space, so I have no idea if anyone has said anything since March. My guess is no. But I think it's a full stop on the community center idea. No one knows what a senior center or community center is going to have to look like in the future from now on. I'm fairly certain that if we were opening the doors of a new senior center now or whenever we are allowed to, we wouldn't have nearly the interest from that population that we would have expected 6 months ago. So that's going to take a lot of thought, going to take a lot of outreach by Elder Human Services, and they know how to do that. They're good at that. But I think the idea of what we want to do is really a big unknown right now. This is the area that I think of all the things we're thinking of doing could just look completely different and maybe not worth doing. We just don't know. We had an undersized senior center. It might now be the right size for the amount of people that want to come out and participate. We'll have to see. I don't think you'll see any I don't think you'll see an ability to have a meaningful discussion on this for probably another year. We'll see how the fall goes, we'll see how the winter goes, and then maybe next spring we'll be in a position to assess it. In terms of Killam and the elementary school space project broadly, I've thought about, but I've not heard or read about anything that schools need to change. So if you're going to build a new school, has the pandemic caused some architectural change? It's kind of a follow-up to what Mark said about, well, under security, isn't there things we're going to need to add? I would say yes. You're going to design your classrooms differently, your hallways differently. I don't know, but I think if you were, going to build a school in the next year, you'd stop right now and say, wait a minute, let's wait for some guidance from the state. So we'll see, have to see where that goes. And certainly, the financial situation of the town is still very much developing. There was some news out of the state this morning. Our senator had prepared us for this by giving us a range that he thought state revenues would drop $4.5 to $6 billion. And he said that maybe 2 weeks ago. But I think most people were on the $3 to $4 billion area, and an independent think tank came out today and said $6 billion minimum. Okay. So the state is now looking at an 18 to 20% decrease in their revenues next year. That's a lot different than a 10% decrease, because they could sort of figure a way around the 10%. So I think the whole financial picture of cities, towns, and the state is definitely in a wait-and-see mode. We'll just have to let it evolve. I think we're in good shape. I think we prepared for it as best we could. But to the extent that we're going to be relying on or asking for help outside the town, that's going to be harder to find. We're going to have to be more self-reliant. And, we've already talked about the downtown streetscapes improvements. That's another area we'll just have to, be a lot more self-reliant on. And I didn't mention it, but Camp Curtis, I reported that we had a terrific meeting with the governor in January. I just can't even imagine that anyone at that meeting would spend more than half of a sentence right now talking about this in the future. It's just too much unknown. Wakefield, from a structure standpoint, was more urgently in need of this solution. Our DPW garage is not falling down. I've talked to Steve almost every 2 or 3 days in Wakefield, including today with the senator. It's not on their radar right now. So we'll just have to, again, pick that up later. It was a good idea. We had good support, terrific support from the National Guard. The reason they support it have not changed. So it's not that the pandemic is going to change that, but I think it's really the ability to spend any time on it from all these different interest groups is just not there right now. Everyone's got other things to do. So we'll see where that goes. And Mark and I have had some discussions on and off about capital, and I think it's really the select board's responsibility, in addition to the other elected boards, to have a community conversation about a lot of these big projects. Many of us were caught in the library, debt exclusion versus override discussion, where a lot of us knew about that, but a lot of people didn't know about that. And we all pledged never to be in that situation again, to make sure the community understood all the needs. I think one of the members on the FinCom meeting, I think it might have been you, Carlo, I'm not sure, mentioned we don't know when we'll next need an override. The last one was only designed for 3 to 5 years. That's another issue that has to at least be discussed. I don't think it's urgent, but if we're going to find a $1 or $2 million permanent hole in our budgets, it's something we have to talk about. So I think it's time next fall to start having conversations about big picture financial issues. And I'll stop there and welcome your feedback.
So one quick comment, two quick comments. One is that thinking about capital, it may be that what we really need to do now is, instead of thinking about space needs, we think more about service needs. And forget about the where for the moment, because the delivery systems may be completely different. But the structure of things may be that we really want to focus on what are the needs that we really need to address. And we started this discussion, even with the community center, senior center discussion. some folks were saying it's definitely we need bigger space. Other folks are saying let's figure out what services we need to offer first, and then we'll talk about the space that it's going to fit in. It may be that the pendulum pushes way over to this needs side for a while. So that's kind of one comment. The other comment, and this was a little bit further off the wall, but just for giggles here for a minute, I do think that we need to talk to the community about capital and priorities and other things. It wouldn't be completely out of the question that part of the recovery involves community projects and community service activities of different sorts. And having valuable projects might turn out to be a pretty interesting thing, at least to have them thought about so that they might get into the queue. And I'm not deluding myself that, oh, absolutely, we're going to get stuff done. But it may be that that is one of the ways that the employment situation gets addressed. It's happened before. I'll stop with that. Other comments? Silence. Is it that late?
Sorry, I did go on a little longer.
There's a lot of doom and gloom. I hope you're wrong about some of that anyway.
I shared with Bob earlier that I think the latest estimate I saw for this quarter's gross domestic product was it would be down 38%. 38.
Yeah.
Not the whole year, just the quarter.
Mark, we've talked about kind of the back to work programs and the community projects. That's a really interesting idea. And one of the questions is, can Reading do it by itself? If there's not some of the formal mechanism, can we do it ourselves? I think we could. We have to think about it, though.
Yeah, that may be one of the ways to harness some of the volunteer aspects.
Yeah, we need a lot of rock walls rebuilt, so.
Yeah, it was an interesting comment about that, actually. So this is an update, from Bob on kind of where the goals are through the end of this fiscal year, so through the end of June. So we'll have a couple of responsibilities. One is to think about next year, and the other is, again, to come back and make sure we do a timely evaluation of this year's activities also. I think those are both on our plate to respond to.
And I've asked department heads to start thinking about goals. I mean, some of these are multi-year goals. What does the second part of the undone work look like? How important is it? And what else do we need to do? And, the way you describe service over space is I hadn't thought of those words, but that captures some of what we've discussed really well. It's not so much the people, it's not so much the space, it's the need.
Cool. We have 3 other things still on the agenda, and we're at about 10 o'clock. We're going to be packed next week, right, Bob?
It depends on how long the town meeting and the election discussion take. That there's an hour and a half set aside for that.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know. I if you don't mind, I'll share a couple thoughts on the retreat. Jane Wellman and I are talking about that. She sent me some initial thoughts. We could share with you electronic some material to get you started thinking about it. The board, well before you have a retreat, the board's going to have to think about some things like what do we want to accomplish. So maybe we can organize our thoughts. I can finally get around to writing up minutes from your last retreat for the new members especially. And, maybe we can address that remotely for now, and before you need to have a real discussion and prepare you all better. Jane and I, or at least one of us, would like to very much talk to the 2 newest members just to help catch them up. The minutes will help, the material Jane has will help, but we really also need to have a discussion and a lot of questions if they have them.
Great.
So
yeah, and I think
that might set you up for a good discussion.
Yeah, some of the materials that Jane shared, particularly toward the end of the meeting, might be good just to share with new members as well. So that's actually a great kind of structure for this. Let's jump to the retreat. So we had certainly hoped that the 5 of us could get together in person and talk a little bit, relax a little bit, and share our thoughts, our desires, our priorities. And what we did at the last retreat is we, each of us kind of created our priority list, and then we tried to see what categories they fit into. And then we looked at categories where there were a lot of people saying similar kinds of things, that this area was a priority. And from that, the goal was to come back and say, here are the X, some modest number of highest priorities that we want to work on as a board this year. And again, you know, we haven't had that chance yet. We got very much interrupted. But I really think this is a good opportunity to do this. And I think it's really important to get the five of us all talking that way, listen to each other, talk about it, see where the commonalities are, and frankly, see where we don't have the commonalities, and get that process going. I thought that Jane Wellman did a great job at the last retreat that we held in terms of moderating, organizing, keeping us on focus. And I applaud the idea. I think it would be a great idea for her to spend some time with Carlo and Karen to share some of those things, to share what we talked about, kind of the structure of things, how we did it. And she also shared with us some things that are done in other communities. There was a list of, I'm going to call them procedures, kind of etiquette, I'll call it, kind of how things are going to run. And it was just basically an agreement amongst the members of the board. In this case, it was Wakefield is one of the ones that she shared with us, just how things are going to get done, and a way that helps us all just kind of work together much more closely. So I am very much in favor of doing this, retreat virtually, and sooner rather than later. It doesn't have to be next week or two, but maybe it's something that we want to do in the early part of the summer, June, July timeframe. And I wanted to just kind of put that out there and kind of get other folks' thoughts on, does that make sense? Is it okay to do this virtually to start? And certainly, we're going to love to get together in person at some point too, whenever we can do that. But I don't think there's an advantage to waiting. I think there's an advantage to moving here quickly.
I agree, Mark. This is Ann. I was hoping we would be able to do a retreat in March. I think it is important for purposes of goal setting, establishing protocols for how we engage with each other and how we represent the community, and how we hold ourselves accountable to the voters and to the things that we pledge to do.
Mark, thanks, Mark. I think as we talk about the retreat, and Bob, thank you very much for the update on your goals. I think a retreat would be helpful in forming not just our goals, but the town manager goals, because both Bob's goals and what we as the board had discussed at our last retreat in January, February, have changed. At least my priorities have changed significantly because of everything that's happened with COVID. And some of those things simply have to take a back seat as we try and rebuild. So I think the sooner we can do that, the sooner, and make it an ongoing conversation as opposed to a one-off, I think we'll be better off.
Great point. Yeah, I think the notion of just doing it once and done is kind of counterproductive to it. It's a starting point, and then we want to be able to do it on a more regular basis. Carlo, Karen, what are your thoughts?
Sounds good. I'm in.
Ready. I can bring chocolate.
Oh, how do you do virtual chocolate? Actually, we could arrange for delivery. Ooh. Where there's a will, there's a way. Okay, so Bob, I would suggest, if this works for everybody, take you up on your and Jane's offer to think a little bit about some kind of background materials, to spend a little bit of time with Karen and Carlo and share with them some of the things that were already done. And I think it would be important for us, maybe in a few weeks' time, to come back and share what we'd like to accomplish, I guess, is the minimum out of that. What it is we want to do. So not that here are the priorities. We'll do that during the retreat. It's more, what are the things that we want to make sure we're going to feel good if we leave that retreat having done the following 3 or 4 things. What are they? that work? So what if we put this on back onto the agenda for 2 weeks hence? Let's see where we are next week, but if that still makes sense, let's put it on to the June 3rd.
I think that's too soon.
Too soon? So then that would put us to the 17th, potentially?
Yeah, I think the VASC is meeting the week of the 8th, maybe. So yeah, I think you'll have some material from Jane. I have a draft in front of me. I was just checking it. You'll have a lot to be thinking about that's going to take you some time to really come prepared to the next time you chat. And I think, we should think about inviting Jane.
Yes.
I think your next discussion might be further along in progress than you might imagine right now.
Great. Okay, so maybe if when you guys are ready to share that information.
Yeah, early next week we'll get that out.
Great. Okay. Good. Any other comments on retreat? You call it charge, not retreat. Anyway. Communications was the other item on here. So Ann, thanks first of all for sending your comments in. From my perspective, you did a great job of taking the words that I would have used and almost exactly in terms of what I think the real issues are that we want to deal with. If you guys have had a chance to look at Ann's, mine are quite similar. How about other folks? What are your thoughts? Let's kind of go one question at a time here. So let me just jump here. So the first question, what goals are we trying to address? My take on this is to be able to share information as widely as possible about what's happening in the town, about what's happening at meetings, to reach more people as effectively as we possibly can. How's that fit or feel?
I fully agree with that, Mark.
I agree as well.
That sounds good.
Okay. The other part of communication from my perspective, and I know it's addressed slightly separately, but we've talked about closing the loop on requests and activities. And to me, that is one of our goals, is how do we get back to residents? How can we be responsive in a way that closes the issue, resolves the issue, and have us all feel like, yes, that one was taken care of. That's the other thing for me that I think is a goal that I think we should try to address. How do we do a better job with follow through and getting closure?
And it is on me to bring you all back a proposal on that, working with Bob, with respect to closing the loop on requests that have come in by way of email, at least.
Yeah, no, and sorry, I didn't mean to poke it directly at you. I think the loop relates to citizen, board, town manager, staff, requests and activities. So email is definitely one of those paths. Things that, I guess in both directions. They come to the board and then Bob takes them and pushes them out. And I guess the other direction also. They're coming in, Bob is taking them and just kind of updating the board. How do we kind of assure that we're getting closure so that the citizens are getting answers and they're getting action?
So one of the things that has been raised in the past, and I don't remember who mentioned it, but the idea of a regular tracking system, so that as issues get raised, they get tracked in some kind of document, and either the town manager or another staff member provides regular updates as part of our regular meetings. Say, this is the progress we've made, this has been dealt with, and it doesn't need to be lengthy or involved or take up a lot of time, but just so that the board knows that that loop has been closed.
I agree. I think that's a great idea. My suggestion for tonight is, rather than solving each of these issues, let's make sure we're in agreement on what we think the issues are. And then we can take some time on each one and go through it. It's not tonight, just to be clear. Anything else in goals that we haven't talked about that we should? Okay. Number 2, how to share this with one voice. And I think here very much relates to this first point about how do we get information shared widely. We received 1 or 2 comments specifically that why does person A say X and person B say Y, sometimes going through the same channel, sometimes going through different channels. Is there a way to kind of coordinate the information that's going outbound? And again, I'm not referring to personal opinions at this point. I'm referring to either board actions or specific facts or other activities like that, or even agendas, things like that.
Are you including town staff on this too, Mark, or just the 5 of us?
Well, I was thinking, so that's a great question. I was thinking it was the 5 of us and how we want to get information outbound, but it could be interpreted much more broadly. You know, how does the town push information outbound by itself? All aspects, all, you know, staff, boards, whatever.
I think the staff has pretty clear and consistent methods of communicating. They have the Facebook page, they have the reverse 911, they have the website, all are maintained very well and reliably and regularly. So, and I think in regards to the COVID response in particular is a really great demonstration of just how well they do this. I think much of that information is passive in the sense that they post and there's an expectation that residents go to the website or go to these pages to find that information. I think one of the things that the board has talked about is sort of a push communication where the information goes out to people. So as far as the staff, I feel like they speak very well for the town. And so for me, the priority would be more on how we as the board communicate outward.
And possibly also channels of communication. So it may be that board members have other channels that could be utilized to expand the flow of information back to the goal. So, you know, saying, let's use that the staff is doing a great job with getting communication out, but we want to figure out how to get it out more broadly.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to be the megaphones. And how do we do that? And I think part of that is there a coordinated way to do that? So it isn't just 5 of us shooting in 5 different directions. You know, to the extent that there are different audiences we're hitting, great. But to the extent they're overlapping, it'd be great to at least have the message be very consistent. Mm-hmm. And I kind of distinguish that from point number 3, which is more kind of the personal side. In terms of how to share, so I think we probably ought to look at what channels are available and which ones are getting used, how well they're getting used. What is it that we want to share as a board? Kind of get agreement on what that is. For example, it could be agendas. It could be minutes. It could be all sorts of different things. What are the things that we're trying to get out there, and what are the ways that we could do it? And allow for consistency, and even say, hey, here's the information. Go post it everywhere.
Mark, I think I've laid this out in the email that's on, I think, page 68 of the packet for people who are tuning in and reviewing our packet at the same time. But my preference is that we not create a duplicative or another microphone for which we can speak with one voice. I would prefer that the select board make use of existing channels, and then to the extent we as individuals want to amplify that message, I think that's fine. But we already have the Town of Reading Facebook page, the Code Red alert system, the town's website, and I think to the extent we want to speak with one voice, we can make a decision as a board to do so and ask that that message be relayed by way of existing channels. But otherwise, the speaking with one voice, I mean, we are 5 individuals. And if we do want to speak with one voice, then I think we make use of existing channels and amplify as individuals.
So to the extent that they're town resources, I completely agree. What if we take different networks that we participate in? would we want to get that consistent message out to those groups? Whether it's the parents network or whatever network we're talking about. Do we want to be able to reach out to those groups with that one voice? And I'm not talking about any sorts of, hey, you can't post yourself, different discussion. But if we want to get out there and encourage volunteers for different kinds of activities, we want to go as broad as we possibly can. And I think that's much broader than just kind of the town website and Facebook page.
Well, yeah, that's sending emails, sharing posts. I mean, I agree with Vanessa as far as the town is doing a great job. Town of Reading, police department, fire department. I know there's a lot of information out there, and I think a lot of it's a two-way street. All five of us have our own different networks, and people are reaching out to us individually, and we're getting back to them. But I think the best use of our time is, we're all individuals, but as a board, it's one board, but we're not going to agree on everything as far as getting the message out, whether it's minutes, pointing to a direction, sharing something positive in town, response to a fire, the mass distribution. I mean, I'm constantly posting, reposting, sharing as much positive as I can because we need it the most right now. And how the town is responding, volunteers are responding, how people are stepping up, doing good deeds. So I just, last week with the Lieberman, God, I forget her first name, sorry. Yeah, so stuff like that. I mean, it's just, it's out there, but I think if we start designating, okay, I do RPN, Ann does Corona, the coronavirus page. Someone else does the rant. Someone else does the Limpy page. I think we just do what we want.
Go ahead, Ann.
I would agree with that. And I think one of the pieces of feedback we had received was not that the board members were in conflict with each other with what we were sharing, but that it was duplicative. But that might just be that person was part of the networks of multiple members of the board, but that's not going to be true for every person. So if I share something from the Town of Reading page, Carlo does and Karen does, we're each reaching our own individual networks, and there will be some overlap there, but they're not entirely overlapping. So I think that's okay if someone gets the message several times. I don't think that's a problem.
So do we need to coordinate the message, or are we kind of okay with how it's working now?
So I think I'm okay in terms of channels that are in use. I think we probably could do more in terms of when we do all want to speak with one voice, to ask if town staff would be willing to say, say what we decide is we want our agendas to be posted on the Town of Reading Facebook page. I'm not sure that is something that the board wants to do with one voice, but say, as an example, that is something that we wanted to do every week. We could ask that that be done, and that's something that the select board could decide. But I don't know that we need an additional channel but we could make use of existing channels as we see fit.
Cool. Karen, you had a comment?
I'm agreeing with a lot of what Ann is saying. I do think that when the town puts out a message, I've been very happy with the content. I don't need to, other than a little introductory. If I'm going to share it, it's great as it is. And that way I'm not mixing the message. I'm not adding my opinion. And if I see another board member's already shared it, then I'm not going to share it there. I saw during the pandemic, there were calls from the community for more use of code red, and the second mass distribution proactively, staff sent it out. So I was really excited to see that. So I'm not looking for another channel to maintain. So that I'm agreeing a lot with what Ann, you're saying.
So maybe what we could do is, if there are topics that we want to get pushed out, maybe ask that staff kind of create that, put it up on their channels, and maybe we take that as the basis for what we use in our posts. or we can take that as the basis for what we use. Would that address the issue? So we're not creating any new.
Yep, and I would just say to Karen's point, sometimes I will share without comment. Sometimes I will share a post and make some comment, and I think that's fine and acceptable. Like one of the posts calling for volunteers, I shared that and highlighted then that we're looking for a new member of the Board of Health, and I thought that was something to highlight as particularly timely given the current chair's date in terms of resignation. So I think it's okay for us to, as individuals, share our own individual thoughts as well.
Got it. So then maybe brings us to question 3 related to kind of on individual members. So the one thing that we can't do is we can't get into a discussion of a matter before the board through a different forum other than the board. Right?
Correct.
So we just need to be careful of that. So if people are posting and sharing opinions, once you get past 2, it has to stop. Otherwise it can be a violation, as I understand it. That can't become a discussion forum. It can be a position, offer a thought, but not a discussion.
I also, Mark, we attended that Mass Municipal Association conference today, and one of the points I took away, I don't know who else was there, you have to be really careful not to express an opinion, particularly about something that may come before board. I mean, it's kind of like, just don't express opinions, because you don't know what's going to come before the board, and you could get yourself in a situation where someone thinks you have a preconceived notion and how did they phrase it? Not due diligence, just, they won't, if it does come before the board and they can say that a member has already expressed an opinion, which is contrary to my concern, I didn't get a fair hearing. I forget the phrasing they used. So taking official statements from the town and not necessarily expressing an opinion. I mean, but sharing and encouraging people to volunteer is a great example.
Yeah. We've got to be a little circumspect, and I think this is an area we can talk about also at the retreat a little bit more in terms of. Yeah, I use the word etiquette. I think, Anne, you used, I don't know if it was guidelines, but just kind of talk this through a little bit, just to make sure that we're not putting someone else in a bad position and we're not developing an open meeting law problem. Cool. I would be willing to try to come back and summarize this and share it, ideally for the next meeting, but worst case, two forward, so that we don't have to spend more time on it tonight. Does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Future agendas. Is there anything that you did not see that Bob posted for next week? I think we've got a pretty good agenda there. Again, not knowing how much time we're going to end up spending on the town meeting discussion and the recall election discussion. And I think Vanessa fell off, in fact, here. Yep, she did.
I just want to remind the board that this agenda needs to be posted tomorrow because of Memorial Day. The placeholder, if you will, agenda item, not knowing how long things will take, is discuss future select board goals and town manager goals. Mark, if you'd rather that to be a continuation of communication, anything is reasonable there. So as long as we know by middle of the day or 1 or 2 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay, well, we can catch up in the morning and let's do a quick assessment, see where that fits. But if it's not on the 27th, it should be the 3rd.
Okay.
Oh, one future agenda item. It's related to minutes. We do still need to approve the February 19th minutes.
Yes.
And March.
Yeah, March 17th, was it?
Yep.
Okay.
And I owe you those retreat minutes.
Caitlin, on the February one, Do you have what you need? So sorry, because I wasn't participating in that last one. Let's see if this is Vanessa. Is Vanessa waiting to get in? Caitlin, can you let her in if she's in the waiting room?
Oh yeah, it was with no name. I wasn't sure who it was. Oh.
All right, let's vet them.
Mark, are we doing public comment next week?
Can you let her in if she's in the waiting room? Yes, we should.
No name. I wasn't sure who it was.
Absolutely. All right, let's vet them. Vanessa, is that you?
Yes, it is. Hello. Sorry, I lost the connection.
Yes, Carlo. Definitely. I think we should put it in. It's there. The fourth item down. Public comment, 7:35.
No, I meant live public comment. I thought we were going to have that discussion a few meetings ago about having after the summit meeting. One of the reasons we went to that was to see best practices and what other towns and cities were doing, and we're still not doing live public comment.
So I think there some are and some aren't, but we can certainly have the discussion about that. So you're not talking about the fact of having a time frame for public comment, but more how we accommodate it.
Right. I thought several weeks ago, and maybe a little bit last week, maybe not, that we talked about how we're gonna. I don't think we can proceed this way indefinitely, not having public participation, just via email for all our Zoom meetings for the next several months. I don't see that as a good practice.
Right. So can I suggest, and it may be that because I was absent last meeting, I kind of am a little bit behind the eight ball on this one. It sounds like what we should do is we could either talk it through a little bit more, or I can explore a few options. One of the ones that I did hear that seemed to be effective was to set aside 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning of the meeting and essentially allow people to come in through the Zoom, through the waiting room, speak, and then leave the meeting from there, and then participate separately after that.
Yeah, and how are we handling next week with the hearings? No public comment or input?
So public comment is on the agenda. So
I mean, for the hearings, the hearing specifically.
I'll comment that on the Gray Coach Lane and then on hearings the next week, such as Meadowbrook, there has been specific applicants that will know what the meeting is, much like the Meadowbrook person showed up tonight. I'm assuming that the 6 folks that live on Gray Coach Lane are all welcome to attend your meeting if they want to. I don't know if they want to yet. For select board policies, I don't know who wants to attend, but in theory, during a hearing especially, the public is welcome.
Right.
I have a suggestion for next week. Would we want to allow both email and Zoom public comment, and then we could transition to Zoom only? But since we've been allowing public comment by email up until now, rather than transition immediately just to Zoom, we could allow both. And we could limit it to a particular portion of the agenda, but just allow the opportunity for people to comment through both mechanisms.
I think if we want to do that, I would suggest that people let us know in advance that they would like to speak, so that we know who they are. And then Caitlin, you could let them in when they say, we'll put them in the waiting room, and you can let the appropriate person in, usher them out, and bring in the next person, something like that, so that we can coordinate what we're doing.
And Mark, also from today's leadership conference, the best practices involved, what you're doing, setting up rules in advance, they pre-announce themselves, a time limit specific to agenda items, and people speak once and let everyone else have an option. And if you're going to give them a set amount of time, people just understand that not everyone may not be able to speak. You're the chair. Under open meeting law does not guarantee that anyone but the chair has the right to speak. But you're trying to accommodate as many as possible.
Right. Exactly. I think I'd be comfortable asking people. So I think what we want to do is definitely post Thursday as we have to. And maybe what we do in the posting is indicate, that we're going to allow it to continue as it was in terms of the email. And if people would like to speak, to let us know in advance, I guess by Tuesday, by end of day Tuesday, that they would like to speak, and that we will ask them to come in through the waiting room, and we'll let them speak with the guidelines, up to 2 minutes in our kind of traditional structure. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah, just like a live meeting.
Okay, so let's do that. So what I think needs to happen is we'll make sure that as part of the packet, we'll put this into the public participation options for that meeting. Good. Okay, hearing no objection. So you want to quickly try and get through these minutes that are here? So this is from last meeting.
Oh, the last meeting.
Hi, this is Anna. Caitlin, I thought you did a great job of trying to capture the guidance that we had given with respect to moving more towards a summary description of different discussion topics. I would want to make sure that we cover in our minutes all of the items that were on the agenda and how we disposed of them. So I think there are a couple edits I would have. I can either send them to Caitlin or I could go over them now.
Are there folks that have comments on the minutes, or just Dan?
I thought the summary was great. Caitlin really liked this version. I have no edits and would suggest that we continue this format going forward.
Yeah, I liked it too. I didn't even realize it was a summary. These are long meetings, the long notes. Caitlin's still working pretty hard, but I thought the minutes were great.
I also don't know, I don't know about everybody else. I'm perfectly comfortable having Anne work directly with Caitlin to make these edits. I don't feel the need to go through them point by point, but I don't know how others feel.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, they were just there. So yep.
Carlo, your thoughts?
No, I'm fine. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Go ahead, Ann.
I can just let folks know the gist of what they were, in case that provides some additional comfort. I just wanted to make sure that it's clear that we did not vote on the minutes from the 19th, because it suggests that we did, or it doesn't suggest how we disposed of them, rather. So I just wanted to make that clear. And I think there was another agenda item where we basically had tabled the agenda item, but the minutes didn't reflect that. So that's effectively what I was going to suggest. And I'm happy to work with Caitlin offline and send her those edits then.
Let's do that, and we can take those up next time. Caitlin, for the Feb 19th, do you have what you need? I understood that it sounds like that Ann and I had some different comments. Is that where it was stuck?
Oh, it wasn't stuck on Caitlin's end. I think Carlo had needed an opportunity to review them offline.
Yeah, it was my fault. It wasn't and if everyone else is ready to approve, I did take the time like I said I would, and Ann had made a lot of, I'm not going to call them changes, and did a good job of, I guess, revising or
editing.
Way more accurate content, but if everyone else is ready, I'm willing. We can approve the 19th. Don't have the 17th, and there's going to be some minor changes to last week's meeting, and then we have the rest of April's meeting. So it depends what everyone else wants to do for the 19th, but I'm ready to approve those minutes as Ann amended.
But we don't actually have them here, do we?
Right, right.
Yeah, we'll have to put them on a future agenda. They're not on tonight's agenda.
Why don't we do this? Okay, so it sounds like we'll be okay with those. Is that the 19th? Is that the right date? Am I giving the right date? Okay,
Yep.
so we'll be okay with those. And you'll talk to Caitlin on these last ones. So those should be pretty quick. And then whatever other ones, Caitlin, you're able to put together, we can put in the packet as well. I know it's only tomorrow, so it's whatever you can do is great. We'll get a few of them done, and then let's just try to knock through them each meeting and try to get them done. And what I suggest, folks, is that if we do have some edits, if there's a way that we can, I know we can't, the problem is that once the packet's out and then we have the comments, it's not really okay to go back to Caitlin and ask her to make any changes. So we kind of have to address them in the meeting. So it may take 2 times to resolve minutes. I think that's
Mark, we could update the packet prior to the meeting with as long as it's made public, as long as it doesn't amend the agenda.
Mark, one of the things we had talked about at our last meeting was that, so for example, Ann and I had the most edits, and some of our edits overlapped. So one of the things that we could do, since our edits are already in the packet, is if 2 people are willing to work with Caitlin to resolve any overlap discrepancies and no one objects to any edits that anybody else made, we can approve them contingent on 2 people making those edits directly with Caitlin and finalizing them, so that we don't have to revisit them twice.
except how can we approve them if they're not final?
We could say contingent on edits made by, Mark and Karen, for example. We've done this kind of voting before for other issues.
I think if there's agreement on what the changes are and it's just wordsmithing, that's fine. I think that if there are more substantial changes, that probably isn't okay.
I would agree. Yep. I mean, what we had talked about last week was that because Ann and I had made edits, for example, to the same paragraph, that she and I could rectify them between ourselves and Caitlin.
And those edits were already public, and those edits were already public and
correct
in a packet.
I mean, I'm trying to find an efficient way of dealing with this because, reviewing edits for 3 meetings in a row is a little excessive.
Yeah, no, I think we limit ourselves to 2. And I think what we do is at the first meeting, if there are wordsmithing things, fine, let's send them along to Caitlin. If there are more substantive issues, I think we need to kind of wrangle them a little bit at the meeting. And then I'm fine sending people off to finish it with the agreement that at the next meeting it'll come up and it should just be approved. I'm just not comfortable signing off on things that aren't final.
Fair enough.
Sorry. Okay, so let's do that. We'll see. We'll at least have 2 sets of minutes for the next meeting. And then, as we're able to get more of them, we'll get them going. And at some point, as of right now, we don't have a meeting scheduled for the 10th. If something changes, we may ask the VASP people to adjust their schedule. But other than that, we would not meet on the 10th. We'd meet again. So we'll meet on the 3rd. We'll have a week off. The VASP people will be meeting, and then we'll meet on the 17th.
You guys will have a week off.
Of select board meetings, yeah.
Don't forget town meeting.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Don't forget town meeting.
Oh.
Good. Okay. if everyone is good with that, anything else we need to discuss tonight? No, I would entertain a motion.
Am I on? I'm on.
Please.
Motion to adjourn the meeting of May 20th?
2020. Do I have a second?
Second?
Great. Oh, roll call vote. Ann,
Yeah.
Vanessa,
Yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Mark, yes. We are adjourned. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night.
Good night.
Night all.